Hello, everybody. Happy Father's Day and welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's Sunday. It is Sunday, the 15th of June, right down the middle of the month. And today we're going to continue on with trying to finally get this Cougar build finished up. We initially started this Cougar build with a MSI Meg Ace, I think, which is a very large motherboard. And it ended up, once we added everything we wanted to add, we were quickly running out of room for all the cabling, wiring, etc. And I decided to go ahead and remove it and put a better suited motherboard for this case. And that left us with the Z890 LiveMixer Wi-Fi, which we had previously prepped that motherboard with a CPU and a basic cooler, some RAM, did our BIOS update, did our Windows 11 install, waiting until one day when a case would come in good enough for that board. So yeah, just a little bit of recalculation, and ended up taking the MSI board out and moving it into a bigger case, or a case at least better designed for a board of that size. It did fit in here, it just didn't look good. It was overcrowded. So then that left us with a blank case and a motherboard that had no home, a good board at that. So I said, why don't these two go together? They seem like they were meant to be together. And we also had a Tryx 360 liquid cooler, which we purchased specifically for the original build. We ran out of room, so we got that unboxed on the previous part 2 of this video. It's installed. The only thing I've done since then is just finished putting the screws in on the radiator. We had 2 in there on top, and then when we ended the video, I mentioned on video I'd put the other 6 screws, or sorry, the other 10 screws in the top of the radiator, just because that's where they belong. And then that got moved out of the way so we can do other videos. So almost a video every day since then. Cleared the counter again so we can get back with this machine and finish installing the Tryx 360. See what it looks like, see how it cools, and hopefully we won't have any more surprises ahead of us. If everything works okay, then all the little decorative pieces can go back on this, and it should look amazing when it's done. Let's say hello to everybody joining us today. Let's see who is in there. Mike Gamer says hello. Eugene Ildago and Eddie Casanova. Mark Baggett, Rick Lakes, and Dustin Fuller. David Graham, as well as, of course, Maralina. I see our friend Buster with a 10-pound super chat. Says hello, Carey and Mara, and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. The temperature in Edinburgh, 57 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 13.8 degrees Celsius. Temperature in Phoenix will be 115, I think is what's predicted for today. You get a temperature warning alert and weather alert, advising people not to go outside in the afternoon unless absolutely necessary, and to be prepared, and don't go hiking on any trails. The rescue teams have already rescued a couple of people. I don't know what people are thinking. Hey, it's a nice day for a hike at 115 degrees. Oh, I'm sure I'll be done with my hike by then. And then they get lost. They get turned around, then they get dehydrated, and then a rescue team has to go and find them and rescue them. So they're asking people not to go on the trails. You'd think that would be common sense, but what are you gonna do? Thank goodness it's not. They won't be rescuing me, I'll tell you that. Let's see, we've got Alex Sasso saying hello, along with Ben Laird and Scott. Doman 2000 and Andy W6AD says hello. Steve Chappelle and Paul Vircher are joining us, along with Sean Skinner, Mortaunt, and our good friend Charlie Purdy. Charlie contributes a $10 super chat, says hello, Carey and Mara, and everyone in the chat. Welcome in, Charlie. Good to see you, my friend. Frankie B says hello. Shout out to our good friend Frankie B there, joining us from New York City. Bajan Guy joins us. And I think I got everybody. I hope I didn't skip over anybody. Hope you're all having a great Sunday. And let's see. Okay, these settings look good. That looks good. I think we're okay. Now, getting back to our build, I placed all the spare parts, everything that we have ahead of us, on the motherboard box. You should know by now I have a system, and that system works really well for me. Just grabbed a Ziploc bag, good old-fashioned Ziploc bag. Put everything, all the cooler parts, even the parts we're not going to use, like for AMD CPUs, we'll keep those and put them in the motherboard box. So we have to put, I like to separate out the cooler pieces from the motherboard and other system parts and screws. That makes life so much easier if you ever have to do any work on either. And we'll just keep it in the Ziploc bag. Sometimes we can reuse a bag that comes with the cooler, but none of the bags that came with the cooler were big enough. So anyway, not that Ziploc bags are very expensive. And then we've got the top of the cooler, which is the two-sided screen that goes on after we've got everything mounted. That's just really for aesthetic purposes. You don't have to have it, but if you don't have it, why don't you just buy a basic cooler for $100 less? Because that's a $100 part right there. In the box, we've got the rest of our accessories. I don't normally keep the SSD and CPU box, but there was room in there. I thought, what the heck? What the heck? We'll throw it in there, along with the extra power supply cables, of course. Keep everything together in one place, and then you only have to look one place to find it all. Those are the rules I live by. Now, I want to be very careful with this. I don't want to knock it off the desk and potentially scratch it or damage the screen, so I'm leaving the plastic on it until we're ready to fire it up. I also want to follow up. I had a TerraMaster S8. It's an all SSD NAS. I don't know if you guys remember it, but yay big, little tiny NAS. It's got 8 NVMe drives in it, 8 4-terabyte NVMe drives. And I decided, since we just reviewed a TerraMaster, the U4500 NAS rack mount, it got me thinking, I bet there's a TOS update on the S8 TerraMaster. So I fired it up last night, and sure enough, it had TOS 5. It says, you know, we're downloading TOS 6. Left to get a bite to eat, came back, and the whole system was down. So I took a look at it, and it said, you need to install an operating system. There's no operating system on this. What happened? I went ahead and said, you know, go ahead, follow the steps, and logged into it. And I started copying, just to test it, all of the video backup files we have here on the studio broadcast PC, the streaming PC. And while it was copying, it was starting to beep at me. I was hearing beep, beep, beep coming from this little tiny NAS. So I log into the NAS looking for, you know, some kind of a notification. And sure enough, it's telling me drive number 7 is getting hot. And by hot, we're talking, I want to say 65 degrees Celsius. On a drive, an NVMe drive, you don't really want to go any hotter than 70. Certainly not for any length of time. So I'm guessing when I had left, the thing started beeping, got too hot, and shut off. So I opened the NAS, because that's just one little thumb screw and the whole lid comes off, if you remember. And those rubber bands that hold on the heat sinks, 2 of those were just broken off. One on drive 7 and one on drive 2, maybe drive 1. So I said, okay, let's just put a better heat sink on. Went and grabbed a couple of heat sinks that I have laying around, and they have metal clips, so they don't use the rubber bands. And the metal clips were, TerraMaster put the NVMe drive so close together, once you put the metal clips on, it won't fit in. It's like 2 cars are parked so close together that there's no room in the parking spot for you, at least if you want to open your car doors. So in this case, the 2 NVMe drives, so let's say we're replacing the rubber band on, well, actually I'm replacing the whole heatsink on drive 7. Drive 7 was one of the thick watt drives. All the others are the S880, but regardless, there's no problem with them. I went online to find more of those rubber bands. I can't find them. I can buy a whole new kit, which includes thermal pad, heatsink, and the rubber band for $6. I can get 2 of them for $8 or $9 on Amazon. But you know, the rubber, the elasticity of the rubber wears out, especially in a dry climate like Arizona, and especially when surrounded with high heat. So it's not a good secure system. Anyway, so I found a better one that clips on, but then the drive will not fit. Drive 7 will not go back into its slot because it hits the sides of drive 6 and drive 8. They're too close together. They'd have given me 2 millimeters on each side. It would have been fine. So I'm like, all right, what else can I do? So I noticed the thermal pads that came with the one that clips on were much thicker, 3 times thicker than what TerraMaster gave us. So I replaced that one thermal pad with the thicker one, put the original heatsink back on it, and then took the rubber bands that came with that whole kit, put those back on. And then I did the same thing as a preventive measure on disc 1 that also had a broken rubber band. Now this thing's been sitting on a shelf not used. Those rubber bands, just from sitting, snapped. That's what's concerning. That's a very serious concern if there's important data on your NAS. Now I will say, I didn't lose any data. When I had to reinstall the operating system, everything was still there. And it's just testing anyway. So it would have been annoying if I had to reset up the RAID, but everything was there. There was no problem. And then I ended up recopying everything off of the streaming computer's video backup folder, which is about 6 terabytes, and let that ran and went to bed, because that's a 6-hour process. I did monitor it for the first hour or two, but I started it a couple hours before I went to bed, and it was running fine. It was hot. The CPU in that thing is an i3, and it hits 95 degrees Celsius. It's crazy how hot that gets, just running SMB, basically taking up all the resources during a file copy and no background processes. So that device, I mean, we're talking about, NVMe drives no longer got too hot. They were running at the hottest, I think I saw 65. So the heat sinks definitely made a difference, or at least the new rubber bands on the affected NVMe drives. Still got to find something better. And even when I resolved that, the CPU still got really worryingly hot. I went into the settings of the TerraMaster operating system and told it to run the fans at full speed. And they're not that loud anyway. And said, well, let's see what happens. Woke up this morning, everything was copied, everything's fine. So even though it runs hot, it doesn't seem to be causing any harm. But the fact that those rubber bands broke so soon, after not even being used, I can't even imagine how much sooner they would have broken had it been under constant high heat and daily usage, where it's on 24/7 versus being off and sitting on a shelf for the last few months. I never had that issue with the ASUS Store flash. I really like TerraMaster's OS. I think they've come a long way with it. However, and the compact size of the TerraMaster NAS. And I leaned on the TerraMaster NAS because it has 8 NVMe's, whereas the ASUS Store that I have has 6. So I wanted that extra capacity, and it's smaller. The ASUS is about yay long, like a router, and the TerraMaster just sits up right vertically like that. It's much less real estate on the desk. So I am still looking for a better solution to secure those heat sinks, and TerraMaster's solution is not sustainable. They're going to have to come out with an update for that and figure that out. The shame of it is there's plenty of room for the heatsink to be taller. There's just not room side by side. The heat sinks need to be just spaced out a little. Well, the M.2 slots, they need to be spaced out a little bit more, just a couple millimeters on each side, so that a more robust heatsink attachment device can be utilized. So that's just an update on the TerraMaster S8, and then we'll see. I mean, it would just suck to have to use that, have that thing beeping at you, and have to open it up and keep redoing this endlessly every single time one breaks. And every single time you replace it, it's just going to break again. So not a good system for longevity. So yeah, that's what I was doing yesterday after the video. Started that, got that finished this morning, cleared that off the desk, got this up here. It's just one thing after another. We go from the fryer to the frying pan here. Scott suggests using small, thin zip ties. Maybe that could be maybe. But the problem with zip ties is they also get dry and brittle and they snap. Here in Arizona, I can show you computer cases I've opened where the zip ties are just laying on the bottom of the case. We have a very dry, arid atmosphere here, and so these zip ties, they don't last very long anywhere. Like, I don't care where you live in the world. No more than about 2 years, and you can just grab them in any sort of jostle. They're brittle, and they just break off. So that's still not a very good solution. If you want something permanent, something like a metal clip, some way to affix it with screws, something that isn't going to go anywhere, something that will endure whether or not there's high humidity or not, whether or not there's a hot atmosphere or cold atmosphere, rubber and plastic are never going to cut it. Not for the long term. So it may do better. Plastic zip ties may do better than rubber bands, but it's still not good. Not for a permanent solution. Lou Greeny said, sorry I'm late. My wife fell on her recent knee replacement and reopened all the stitching. She's in surgery. Oh, that's got to be painful. James Spellman said, hello, the wife has let me come out to play. Welcome in, James. Our friend Mitch Morrison went to the doctor and they said, you know, if you don't get heart bypass surgery, you could drop dead any minute. So Mitch is in recovery. He's doing well. I just heard from him. This all went on last week. We decided to basically keep it quiet, make sure that he had his privacy and people weren't too worried about him. And now he's going to go through physical therapy for the next couple of weeks, and then we'll have him back on the show once he's back to his good old self. So he wasn't suffering any symptoms, and he was taking care of it before it became a problem. So good on him for nipping it in the bud instead of waiting until, you know, a heart attack or, you know, the medical issues that can arise from clogged arteries. And yeah, it's, you know, heart surgery today is pretty routine, but nonetheless, you still worry about any time anybody's having a surgery, and we're certainly glad to hear that he's doing as well as can be expected, and that everything went as it should have. There were no surprises, and he's just got a little recovery ahead of him, and he'll be back to his old self in no time. So if he's watching, a shout out to our good friend Mitch. Dan Nilsson joins us and says hello. There's Alan with a Y saying hello. We also have John Downey and Ruben Yermian saying hello. I say good, get better to Mitch, right on. Shamin Kajveras joins us and says hello. And Picard 2005 says hello. Charlie Purdy and Mark Gaines are saying hello. If I didn't catch you guys earlier, welcome in. NCG with a $5 Canadian Super Chat said, I just want to send kudos to your troubleshooting videos. Online tech gurus advice. Unblocking registry tweaks, underbolting instead of real advice. Well, all it takes is to just actually do this for a living, to get paid by other people to do work, and you'll find out just how dangerous and unwise the advice you get from most content creators is in the real world when you're being held accountable for other people's stuff and they're paying you for that. They don't take kindly to you screwing up their computer, and they expect you to keep fixing it as many times as you need to for free, no matter if you can pay your rent. If you're suffering because you haven't eaten for 3 days, because you're going back to redo work, because you're taking advice from content creators who there's no recourse for you. You just made bad decisions and customers trusted you. So either it's time for you to get out of the business and enjoy your home computer and suffer alone with whatever bad decisions you make, or follow tech advice from people that have a reputable history as computer repair technicians and preferably still work in the industry, and preferably use their real name so you can verify who they are. When somebody won't show their face or tell you their real name, you should not be taking any advice from them, in my opinion. I wouldn't. Somebody wants to hide their identity in any way, even if they show their face but they use a fake name, I'm not going to take anything they say seriously. At the very least, I got to know who you are. If I don't know who you are, I would be a complete fool to listen to them. Verify who they are and make better decisions, right? just because they're making bad decisions and recommending you do the same, is that really advice you want to follow? So I appreciate that you get it, what we're doing over here, and we're trying to sort of break the stereotype of what exists on YouTube. We're just a bunch of people sitting around the house with nothing else better to do, make videos that are impractical. That's fine. They're allowed to do it, and it's great entertainment, but I think you'd be a fool to listen to 90% of them. When you get folks like Doug Betts or Mike's Unboxing, How To, and Review, they're in England, myself, and there's also many others, by the way, who actually work in the industry. I don't care if they used to work in the industry, because the industry changes too rapidly for them to be able to say they're still on top of it. They're not. 6 months out of this industry and you're already behind. You have to be in it, churning. You cannot tell me what it's like to be in the ocean if you haven't been in the ocean in 6 months, right? You can't really tell me what the waves and temperature and, you know, the feeling of the condition of the water. You have to get in. So that's the best advice I can give you, is really consider who you're getting your information from, and do your own research before you adopt somebody else's idealism as yours. And don't worry about other people's problems unless they specifically ask you for help. My advice is to mind your own business. And, you know, if a friend does ask for help, then absolutely give them 100%. But otherwise, it's very insulting to step into somebody else's business like you're going to do something they can't, like they're not capable. It creates a lot of fights and ends a lot of friendships, even though it's always the best of intentions from those content creators that irresponsibly give you bad advice. They're not doing it on purpose. They don't know any better. And if the viewers don't know any better, well, that's just not a good recipe for success for anybody. And much the same way, if somebody's struggling with something and they ask you for help, it's great to help them. But if you just jump in and start offering help, you might find that there's a rift in your friendship all of a sudden. So those are the rules I live by. Take them or leave them. But when I find working technicians that also have YouTube channels, which is very, very rare here on YouTube, I also like to let you guys know, I also like to bring them on. Our good friend Scott, Ask Your Computer Guy, he works in the industry and he makes YouTube videos. When somebody just they're like, hey, Carey, you should interview this guy. Who is he? Oh, he's a guy that really knows his stuff. All right, so what's the name of his business, or what's the name of the company he works for? Oh, I don't think he works for anybody. Well, then how do you verify that he knows his stuff? If he doesn't have customers' problems that he's solving, that he's responsible for, that are going to call him at any moment and hold him accountable for anything he's done, you can call yourself a genius all day if your only measure of point of reference is your mirror. But when other people that pay you to provide a service say you're really good, they keep coming back, and you've got a business that has been sustained for a number of years, clearly I don't need to verify that your customers are happy because your business is still open. And clearly I don't need to question the way that you do things, because if they weren't working, you wouldn't have a business. None of that applies to an enthusiast. It doesn't mean they're not entertaining. It doesn't mean they can't offer valuable information. What it does mean is it's up to you to figure out what's nonsense and what's real, because they don't even know most of the time. So that's why it's important to me to make these videos as a working technician, because if you were a doctor and you were watching medical shows on TV, if you were a lawyer and you were watching law shows on TV, just ask any doctor or any lawyer about any law show or medical show on TV that they believe is accurate to the real world. That's entertainment versus reality. And if you're going to replicate what you see on TV in your life in legal or medical issues, you just might find yourself making it worse than it ever was before for yourself. So it's your decision. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm telling you what to watch for. And these are the warning signs. These are the red flags. No real name, and doesn't show their face. Don't believe a word they say without double and triple checking it. They might be 100% on, but they might not. And if a stranger who covered their face up and had sunglasses and everything walked up to you and started telling you some advice, would you listen to them? Who are they? Is this all a prank? You want to be gullible? You just want to have trust and faith? Don't let me stop you. I can't run my business on that. That's all I'm trying to say. All right, let me jump into the chat one more time. Before we get started, acknowledge who else we've got joining us. Richard DeFry says hello. There's 3D Everything. And Martin Erickson says hello. Ghostly Lurker and Jim Kenny say hello. So Jim had very kindly sent an Amazon gift card, but unfortunately he sent it from Amazon.ca, and we can't use that. So I don't know if Jim got my email or not, explaining to him that I cannot cash your Amazon. I can't redeem it. It has to be from Amazon.com. Every Amazon, like Amazon.ca and Amazon.co.uk, they all require separate logins, and you have to order from that country and have it imported in, and then import fees. Anyway, I can't. It was a nice gesture, but I suggest you reach out to Amazon customer service and ask for a refund. I do appreciate the thought, though. All right, so where do we go from here? Where we left off, we got the radio, the fans. We had to rotate the fans around so the cables were on the other side. We had to move the radiator forward towards the front of the case because then we were jammed up against the back, and that was creating a bit of a tight spot for me to get the power cable onto the motherboard. I've not been able to turn the board on without a cooler on it since we've mounted it into the system and taken the stock air cooler off that I just put on there. Well, it wasn't stocked to the CPU. It was stocked to a different Intel CPU. We talked about that on the previous part of this build video. Where we were left after a couple hours was I still had to mount the water block to the CPU, and I still have to wire it all up, including the USB cable, install the Tryx software. And I said, we're going to be in this another 2 hours minimal. And I said, let's just pick this up another day where I'm not as worn out from, what was probably a 3-hour video. And keep in mind, I'm also talking to you guys while I'm working. And sometimes answers can take a while to fully explain them as best I can to be best understood. Unfortunately, I still get comments from people who don't listen. There's nothing more frustrating than me. Then I explain something and then somebody says, well, there's an exception, Carey. And I'm like, yeah, that was mentioned in the video when I gave the answer, but I don't know what to do. It's frustrating. So a lot of times I just end up removing their comments because they're not useful. I've also had people repeat back what I said in the video, which is like, were you not watching? Why are we just playing that mocking game? I don't understand. So those comments get removed. And then you have people that come in and want to harass you, and then of course those comments get removed. And what's left right here is a great audience, and thank you for not being that guy. All right, let me just tilt this down. I guess that's where I'm going to go here. The CPU, we've already cleaned that off, and we already have thermal compound, if I recall, on the bottom of our block. Yes, plenty of thermal compound there. That's covered up with that plastic plate that keeps it from getting all over everything and contaminating it with dirt, dust, fingerprints, etc. So we should be ready to just mount this up. And that means we're going to need the back plate. Which, let's see, what do we need in here? Yeah, this is part of the whole fan controller setup. We've got, as I mentioned, it's not just a matter of bolting this on. There's some wiring to be done because of the RGB. If this were a less expensive, far less expensive water block, it would probably install faster, less complicated, less wiring, cost less, and actually perform better. So there is a major price being paid for the aesthetic looks. And, if that's your thing, that's your thing. I don't, you want to put hubcaps on a lawnmower, don't let me stop you. It's not hurting anybody. It's just your money. And so a little bit of hubcaps on a lawnmower. This computer's all RGB'd out, and not my thing. I do it because that's the trend. And if you're going to build computers and you don't make them with RGB, and you never do, well, you're just not going to get half the viewers who just want to see blinky lights. Know your audience. And then we do mostly I do a lot of non-RGB builds, or RGBs, builds that have minimal RGB. When I install computers for businesses, if I brought them a computer with RGB, I'd probably get a support call. Seriously. But why is my computer supposed to be like off the top? I could see like red and blue and green lights. None of the other ones do that. Is that something for me to be worried about? You don't think I've ever gotten that call? I also took my Sharpie marker and labeled the bags for AMD parts. So in the future, like today, I can't remember. So we don't need AMD parts, but we still hold on to them. And then the bags I did not label, they were all not labeled originally. These are for Intel, that's for Intel. So unless it was specifically for AMD, then I wrote AMD on it if that were the case. Yeah, so there's another one. I wrote AMD up here. And then we've got what appears to be another, this looks like an ARGB cable to control your lighting. Every time we want to control lights, we add another cable. We add another light, we add another cable. For every single light, there's a cable. There's a cable for this, 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 cable for this. There is a cable for every single light you add, okay? So if you don't like cable management, or you want to minimize it, then minimize the number of cables you have by minimizing how many RGB devices you're putting in. Every single RGB device, except for your RAM and your motherboard, will require an additional cable. So if you've got 6 RGB devices, instead of, let's say we have 6 fans. With 6 fans, we use 6 cables. With 6 fans with RGB, we use 12. Now they do have what they call these wireless fans that interlock together if they're all together on a radiator. So then you're down from 6 to 2. That's still one more than you would need if you didn't have the RGB. You understand what I'm saying? No matter what, you're adding more cabling, you're adding more complexity, you're adding more challenge, you're adding more expense, and you're getting no better performance, no better security, and no better reliability. It's just throwing money at lights. Lights that need to have power. In addition to everything else that needs to have power, it's powered separately. So if you're okay with it, I am. But be prepared, because you might find yourself in a position where your parts are overcrowded and won't fit in your case. Who did that just happen to recently? I know a guy. What's interesting is, even though this comes with thermal compound already on it, they also gave us a tube with thermal compound. You don't normally get both. And the problem with giving a regular average customer both is they think you need to use it. You use one or the other. You do not use both of these. I should need to tell you that, but people are getting their information from enthusiasts, and they're getting a lot of bad information out there. All right, so we don't need any of this. I don't think I need documentation. So I guess we're going to start with our back plate. And this is adjustable. We've seen these kind of back plates on other coolers. Nothing new and innovative here. This is just a standard, everyday adjustable Intel style back plate. And it looks like it doesn't matter which orientation it goes on. But the default position on these standoffs that are built in here, they need to go further out towards the edges. They're for a smaller or older CPU socket. And let's see how we adjust these. Let me get my glasses and take a look. Sometimes you have to remove this plastic sleeve, and other times you just move the plastic sleeve. Let's see which one this is. Oh, so the plastic sleeve just moves up. I prefer that. That's good. I'm just going to push these into the corners. And now they should be far enough away that if I try to seat it in here, perfect fit right there. And then to hold that in place, we've got these standoffs. This is more or less the way 90% of third-party coolers, even if they're air coolers. On an Intel system, this is pretty much the way they will follow this. They may have some deviation, but for the most part, it's the same process. And all I need to do is with one hand, I'm going to hold that back plate in so it doesn't fall out. And I'm going to just go to one corner and start this standoff. And I'm going to do that until it's just finger tight. And then I'm going to do the opposite corner. And the reason why I do the opposite corner is so it'll hold the back plate in. Because if I just do the top, I have to continue to hold it when I do the bottom, because the bottom will push. When I push this in, the bottom will, if it gets hit on the sides, it'll go outward. So by going to opposite corners, one on the top, one on the bottom, that holds the back plate in position for us, so it won't move away when we put in the other screws, and we no longer need to support it with our other hand. Make sense? Now when we put the water block on the CPU and we do opposite corners, we do that so there's no warping. That's a different reason. I'm just doing this because I don't want to work harder than I have to. But yeah, I could just keep holding that back there. I'd rather not. I'd rather work smarter than harder. That doesn't mean that's what I do, but that's what I'd like to do. There's what you want and there's what you can have, or what you get. What you want versus what you get. Seems like a song, but you can't always get what you want. Let's see about that. Now it doesn't really matter what order we tighten these down, and you do not use any sort of pliers or wrench. Don't make them that tight. You're going to say, but Carey, that's moving back there. Yes, that's what it's supposed to do. And when you put this piece on top of it and you bolt it down, as you tighten the screws, the back gets pushed in as you tighten the screws around the block. And it adds the appropriate amount of pressure. Not all CPUs get the same amount of pressure. And people, again, mostly enthusiasts, they don't understand this. They don't understand that the fact that you've got thermal compound, that's not enough. The fact that, oh, well, this broke and I'll just change the screw out. These screws will all tighten down to within a certain there's a minimum and a maximum amount of pressure that needs to be applied to the top of each CPU, depending on which family the CPU is in, how tall the CPU is. The CPU is taller than, say, a 9th gen or a 10th gen. As a result, if you don't accommodate for the extra height, you'll crush and bend the internal heat spreader and cause warping where it doesn't cool correctly. If you over tighten any CPU, you will bend it potentially, and then the bend is often not even seen by the naked eye. You have to put a tool on it to see it after you take it all apart and wonder why it's running hot. So the designers of the coolers, they follow the engineering specifications from the chip manufacturer to the range of pressure that needs to be applied on top of the CPU for even and optimal heat transfer. It's not just tightening down screws. It's just not how it works. But as long as the manufacturers designed it so when the screws stop turning, you're at the right pressure, then that's fine. But this gives you an example of enthusiasts who don't understand. They think tighter is better. And these days, a lot of coolers don't allow you to over tighten, but older coolers do. And I've seen boards, I have seen not too long ago, where people have tightened the cooler down so tight it bent the board. The motherboard bent. And then they say, well, how come this RAM socket doesn't work? The reason the RAM socket doesn't work isn't because you have a bad motherboard, it's because you over tighten the screws and cause the board to bend. Now I want you to just picture in your head a socket that's shaped like the letter U, and you're trying to put something straight into it. So all the pins over here are connecting, all the pins over here are connecting, but where the dip is, there's no connection and that RAM won't work. This isn't rocket science, but the enthusiasts don't know. They don't tell you, and you don't know because you're getting your information from them. Now, I'm not talking about all enthusiasts, but because I can't specify which ones do and which ones don't, all I can tell you is be aware, watch out for yourself, and be careful about the information provided. Because what they're providing you may be accurate in the context that they provide it. They may be omitting, knowingly or unknowingly, knowingly or unknowingly, they may be omitting critical information that would be a future problem or diagnostic or frustration for you. And they didn't necessarily do it on purpose, they just don't know any better. And you don't know any better because you never did it before and you listened to them on how to do it. And maybe they told you how to do it right, but maybe they didn't specify how tight those screws were, and you just assumed crank them down, and you cranked it down and bent your board, and you didn't break it. All you have to do is loosen the screws up a little bit there, genius. That's not fair. I'm teasing. We all learn, right? But ideally, we go to justifiable, reputable sources online, because online, there's nobody to stop you from telling people how to do anything. It doesn't matter if you're an expert. If you just want to make a video and tell people how to fix drywall, but you've never fixed a piece of drywall, or maybe you fixed a gypsum board, but you've never fixed any other form of wall material, and you don't mention that, and somebody's wall isn't made of the same thing your wall is, and they try and follow what you said to do because it worked for you, versus you work for somebody in construction who does wall repair all the time and can tell you, if it's this kind of wall, you do this. If it's this kind of wall, you do that. And how do you know which kind of wall you have? They can talk about that. That's the difference. Watch out for yourselves. All I'm trying to tell you. It's a lot of bad information out there, and it may not be on purpose. And don't even get me started with the scammers who intentionally cause harm. If you look for Windows 12 videos, it's all fake. Not a single one of those is real. And they don't always disclose this is satirical. They want to see how stupid the public is by getting them all worked up. Do you want to show people that you're that gullible? So if you look right now on YouTube for Windows 12, there are videos that supposedly are showing Windows 12. There is no such thing. It's all made up. Everything you watch about Windows 12, everything you read, it's all made up. If they're saying it exists, it doesn't. Because if it existed, there'd be a beta. They don't just magically release an operating system overnight. By the way, everybody, here's what it's just not how it works. It's never worked that way. And anybody with any common sense or any history of computers would be very obvious when you think about it. Wait a minute, where's the beta? There's no beta. Well, I saw it on YouTube. That wasn't real. I saw David Copperfield make things disappear. It's an illusion. I saw Chris Angel floating on a public sidewalk. He wasn't floating on the sidewalk. It's all illusion. And if it's there for entertainment, please understand the difference. Most enthusiast content is entertainment. That's all I want to say about that. All right. And nothing wrong with entertainment. Nothing wrong with it. But don't get your medical advice from television shows. Please don't get your law advice from television shows. And please don't get your computer advice from enthusiasts. Or if you do your research. Don't just take one person's word for anything, including me, by the way. Is there plastic on here? I think I did this before. There's like a weird wave on this, which looks like a piece of plastic. It may just be the reflection. Water block. It looks like we had just a minor disconnection from the YouTube server just a moment ago. So hopefully, I don't think we missed anything. I was just explaining that Hoses should always go towards the RAM. If I see people building computers that have the hoses any other way, I think they don't understand the way the standard is there, or they bought some weird water block where the manufacturer, for some reason, at least on an Intel build, the hoses go towards the RAM. And it should be that way universally. That doesn't mean you have to do it that way. It's just what I'm thinking. When I see something working, let's just say it's working, there's no problem, but they didn't follow the standards, which is their right, it's your equipment, you don't have to follow any standards, but it doesn't look right to me. That's all. All right. You know, especially when you're putting something in for looks and you put it in backwards. It's like buying the Mona Lisa and hanging it upside down. You're not doing anything wrong. I don't think it's right. It's like, you understand why there's an orientation to this portrait, right? Yeah, I like it upside down. Okay, you're allowed to, but seems to me you don't understand how to hang a painting, but what do I know? We all have our preferences. Dan Nilsson joins us and says hello. Welcome in, Dan. Craig Casabona with a $20 super chat. Thank you, Craig. Right on. Appreciate you. LRCX joins us there from California. Welcome in. And again, a happy Father's Day to everybody. I'm going to save these bags for some future thing I'll need them for. And then I'm going to flip this over so I can let gravity assist me in getting the water block seated without fighting gravity here. Oh, this thing is getting heavy. There we go. Now, when we're ready to install the block, is the time to remove this plastic cover. So let me take that off. And again, hoses facing the RAM, cable out of the way. This should sit right down like that. Everything looks good, I think. And I'm going to take our thumb screws and I'm going to just turn them a couple times, not more than a couple turns, because you can cause the whole block to tilt and it'll raise up higher than the screw, and then you have to fight it to get the thumb screw started, and it's already more difficult. It's difficult enough. There's no reason to make it more difficult because you're trying to, well, I suppose you think if I tighten it now, I don't have to come back and tighten it later, but you're just making it harder to tighten everything else. This one in the corner is a bit hard for me to get to, so I think I'm going to use a screwdriver to help me out here. Once we get them started, then what we do is we go opposite corners. And once again, think about how much more difficult this would be trying to get this thumb screw started in this corner if this were vertical. It's already challenging horizontally because we're going into a tight corner here. What's happening?
You have email.
All right. I like it when we get email. I am struggling a little bit here to get this. It's a very tight fit. Did I get it? Finally, I got it. And let's do the other two, and then I can put it back on its feet. See how much easier that one is? And my hoses look like they're a bit in the way here. If you're having to press down in order to get the screw started onto the standoff, it's because you tighten the opposite corner too far. Loosen it back up. It should only be about a turn, maybe 2 turns past the first or second thread. And then that should make it a lot easier to get the others started, and do the others the same way for the same reason. Once they're all started, it's real easy to just pretty routine to tighten them down. And then I also want to make sure that with this cooler, having our hoses off towards the RAM for some reason would not be different. So let me just seat this on here and see what it'll look like, because I don't want to find out after I put it together that it's not facing the way I want it to face. Is basically this side towards the front and this side towards the side, because we have glass at the front, glass at the side. Doesn't do me any good to have this facing up or down or to the back. So one of the problems is if the hoses are going to come out this side, then we either have to turn the hoses away so they don't block the screen, or we need to rotate the cooler. As I mentioned before, some coolers, there are some designs where the hoses don't go out towards the RAM. If I were to put this is our screen, right? So that we've got, if we put it in this orientation, we'd be getting the top and the front and the bottom. Who's going to see the bottom? But I just want to see if that fits better. I'll tell you, from what I'm looking at here, it looks like it wants to go on this way. Okay, so this is a good thing to figure out before you get too far. So now the top of the screen is facing the radiator fans, and what that tells me is this particular block needs to be rotated. After I got through that whole diatribe about hoses going out to the RAM, that is your standard, the way most water blocks install. There are designs, and sometimes they have a good reason, where the hoses come out the other side. If we turn the block around so the hoses are the opposite side, then when I put this piece on, the top should be the bottom. Well, that's not going to work for me either. So, so then if I on an Intel chip, you can turn this water block 90 degrees, or you can every 90 degrees. You have 4 positions. And I was sitting on a power cable. On an AMD chip, you only have up or down. You don't have left or right. Or if you do have left or right, then you don't have up or down. So you only have 2 positions to put on an AMD. If we put this same water block on an AMD, there'd only be 1 of 2 positions. I could only get it wrong once. Here I can get it wrong 3 times. So by doing a test fit on this, if I know I want this piece to face that way, then this block has to turn clockwise. Think about this. It's got to turn clockwise to basically 90 degrees clockwise. So if we call this noon, this would be 3 o'clock, that would be 6 o'clock, and me would be 9 o'clock. Those are our 4 positions. So if I move this into the 3 o'clock position, that means our hoses will come out of the bottom. If our hoses come out of the bottom, that means they could interfere with access to our M.2 drive, maybe. That's another reason why we don't usually install them that way. There may not be any issue there, and access to that well obstructed may not be that difficult. Until we put it in, how could we know? Because I haven't secured anything down, I don't have to worry about reapplying any thermal paste. There is going to be some transfer of thermal paste from the bottom of the cooler to the top of the CPU just by me doing what I'm doing, but it's not enough that you have to worry about, oh no, I have to reapply. No, you don't. It's fine. No worries. So with that being said, let me remove this, and we're going to make sure the hoses go towards the bottom of the case. Also, if we look at this, there's like a ripple here. That's clearly intended to be the top. Meaning, when you look at your computer and you're looking at the screen, the word Tryx, T-R-Y-X, should be displayed right on the front of it here. Well, hold on a minute. Like this. And that way you're going to see the screen from the side of the case here and through the front of the case here. And then there's writing on top, and there's a different design on top. So we know that's supposed to be the top. Now, depending on if you're going with a vertical case or a horizontal case, that could vary. But that is the way it's intended. Now, some water blocks don't care. Some water blocks, the manufacturers, like NZXT, will say, put it on any way you want. You can go in the software and rotate the screen. Others don't have a rotatable screen, in which case you'll have a sideways logo, which may or may not bother you, but it doesn't cause any issue with the cooler effectiveness.
Why else am I here?
Do I have an email?
You have two.
2 emails. All right. Well, I guess it's good enough time for a break. I've worked for 6 minutes. Time for a 20-minute break.
Yeah. It's time for me to walk outside and burst into flame.
Oh, it's too hot. Hey, Jim Kenny sent us a $10 Amazon.com gift card. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you, my friend. Yeah, we couldn't use the Canadian one. Our friend Charlie Purdy, sends a very generous Amazon gift card. He says, this is my 1-year anniversary to the channel. Thanks to you and Marlena for all of your kindness and help. Thanks again, Charlie Purdy. Well, thank you so much, Charlie, and of course to Jim Kenny, for you guys supporting us here so we can continue to buy products to review independently without having to get the permission of the companies or getting their blessings. We work without their blessings, and we do that because of your generosity and support here, not because of YouTube. That doesn't work anymore. So thank you, and to all the members. Without you guys, we wouldn't have this content. This is a $350 cooler. They did not send it to us for free. I should clarify, this was a $350 cooler. The price has gone down from the time I bought it to what it sells for today by a good $60 or $70, but I was an early adopter and I paid more for it. I warned you guys about this. So anyway, I did what I warned you not to do, or be prepared to lose some money if you decide to be first. Be prepared to deal with any untested products, potential issues that you will be, as an early adopter, one of the first people to experience. When we reviewed that Ugreen NAS the other day and they don't have a guest account, Ugreen support confirmed they don't support a guest account. And no other NAS manufacturer, whether it's TerraMaster, Synology, QNAP, ASUSTOR, has no such ruling. They would never, ever do that. Never. So whether or not Ugreen just doesn't know any better because they're new and they still have a little polishing to do, that product's been out over a year now. So just because you're buying it first, you don't mind waiting for the problems to be solved. You might be waiting for a while. If we had waited for Ugreen, for somebody else to bring this to Ugreen's attention, we wouldn't have had any issues, and we probably would have paid less for the unit, because it's not as, the older the technology gets, the longer the product's on the market, usually the cheaper it gets. So it's kind of a double whammy, right? You're spending more to have more problems. And I have not found a single Ugreen NAS review mentioning the lack of a guest account. The reason that's so important to me is I'm on a secured local network. Nobody can get in from outside. All remote access is disabled. I want to be able to bring a customer's computer up here or a new build, access my utilities on the NAS without having to log in and save the login credentials on somebody else's computer. It's unprofessional. I also don't want to use my Fire Stick to watch my media and have to use the remote control to enter my username and my password, and if I screw it up, do that again, just so I can play some of my media. It's ridiculous. And I refuse. I absolutely refuse. So I've always set up guest accounts. Ever since I set up my first NAS, even to this day, and there is no NAS manufacturer, and there is nothing within Windows that prevents me from just signing in on a secure local account. Local LAN is what I mean. I'm pretty worked up about it because I don't like having my freedoms taken from me. That's what Apple Computer does. I would expect that from an Apple. If Apple made a NAS, that's exactly how I would expect it to work, and I would expect it to cost twice as much. But if I want the freedom of choice and control, I want Windows and anything Windows-based. And what Ugreen has done is they've given us Mac rules, partially, on a device that should be, it shouldn't care what operating system. It shouldn't matter if it's Linux or Mac or Windows. Don't give me Mac rules on my Windows platform. It's what everybody else does. No other NAS manufacturer does that. So I'm going to just chalk it up to they're still new and they're figuring that out. But we're sending that unit back. We're not going to wait because they may never, ever enable a guest account. Or they could offer a software update 3 days after we send it back to Amazon. They won't commit to us on when they will release it or if they will release it. So we're going to just get our money back. Now, why do you suppose no other reviewers of the Ugreen NAS mentioned it? I'd like to know what you think. Am I just a genius? Is that what it is? I'm just that much smarter than all the other reviewers? Or is there something else going on? Was there information the reviewers were not allowed to give you? And the reviewers not mentioning that there might be information removed? Or did the reviewers not know any better? Either way, are either one of those answers good enough for you? And if you know that now, what else don't you know about other products that reviewer has reviewed? That if you invest your hard-earned money into it, that you find out after the fact, how would you feel about that? Because personally, it offends me. Really, Carey? We couldn't tell. I know. My magnet on the end of the screwdriver is struggling to hold that big heavy thumb screw on the end. Great, I think I got it start. Did I have it start? No. There, did I get it? I think I got it. Again, don't tighten these down too tight. Just get them started, or you'll find each other one you have to install gets more difficult as you start applying pressure downward on the other ones you've already done. If you're not quite sure if orientation matters, even if it's a purely aesthetic choice, just look at the marketing photos from where you purchased the item, and it'll probably have it shown in a system that the marketing company thought is the best way to display their product. And the best way I can explain this is there's a very psychological aspect to basically manipulation that if you go into the marketing business, you're learning how to manipulate people. That's your business. And if you notice, like just to give you some evidence of this, if you look at an advertisement for a clock or a watch, nearly universally worldwide, the picture of the watch face or clock face will be at 10 after 10. So does that mean that the photographers only take pictures of clocks at 10 minutes after? Go look right now. Go look on Amazon, go look on Google. Just look for a Rolex, look for a Timex, look for a Casio analog watch, not a digital watch. And tell me what time the watch says. There are some pictures out there where the time is not 10 after 10. But statistically, those watches don't sell as well. Hard to believe. So when I tell you that it's a lot of psychology, I'm not joking, and you can easily verify what I'm telling you. And it's not just with watches, it's with everything sold to you. Whether you're shopping in the grocery store, buying a car, and yes, content creators sometimes end up doing just that, even though they may not even be aware they're doing it. I don't know why I'm struggling with this corner. I guess because the hoses are in my way here. Okay, so with all that started, I can now tighten these thumb screws down, and we want to go opposite corners. Again, this is the part that we want to make sure they're tightened in a specific order. And these days on a modern cooler, they should come to a dead stop. They shouldn't allow you to over tighten them like they used to. But if you have an older cooler or maybe a lesser quality brand that still allows you to over tighten, you can bend your motherboard, and you'll know because all your RAM won't be available and you'll think you've got a bad RAM stick. That's one very obvious and easy to diagnose symptom. And you probably won't hear that from any other enthusiast, by the way. In fact, if there's an enthusiast warning people about that, I'd love to see their video. So do share it with me in the comment section if you find one. That's almost always only going to come from somebody who works in the industry. I'm not saying why, I don't know why. It's just, that's just how it is. I guess because they just don't see enough computers, or they don't fully understand what the problem is. And that what they may end up doing is just sending the board back or replacing the RAM, and they just play part starts. They shoot the parts cannon at it. They end up replacing everything, and they don't realize there was nothing wrong with anything but what they caused. And they'll never know. They'll just say, I guess I got some bad parts. And so they go on with life, never really knowing that they were the cause of the problem. I see that all too often in my business. And if you want to educate people, you have to make them aware of their mistakes. It's not to belittle them or hurt their feelings. We want you to learn so that you don't repeat what happened and you understand why it happened. And then hopefully you will train other people so they'll be aware of it. And now we can pretty much vaccinate the world's ignorance. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just loosening all these thumb screws because I don't feel like they tighten down evenly. So I want to just try one more time by backing them off just a little bit. And now for the last turn or so, then I'm going to go to opposite corners. And that reapplies the tension. You know, see that one I turn more than the others. That reapplies the tension. You don't have to unscrew everything all the way out. If you feel like it may be, you know, one side got tightened first by mistake, just loosen it up a little bit. Just a couple of turns from tight is all you need. And then go back and tighten them in the proper order. This looks like our water block power, so that's going to go, I guess here's our water block header, or all-in-one header. Let me just make sure this is going to look right now. If I want to put this in this way, it should look, I hope, goes in like this. Yes, 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 yes. Pick this back up, put it back on its feet. There we go. So that way I have the screen visible from the front and visible from the side. This is the top, which has got a design on it. And the hoses, in this case, come out of the bottom. That's just the way Tryx made it. That's not the industry standard, but neither is the screen. So one kind of goes hand in hand with the other one. We have to hook up our fans, the radiator fans, and we've got to hook the block up to USB in order to control that screen and to be able to, monitor the pump speed, everything else. Some cheaper pumps just plug into power. There's no USB cable. There's no software. They just run like a cooler. One less cable. But if you want something that's got a bunch of RGB on it, or a screen, you need to communicate with the pump. That's going to require a USB cable. And if you've got multiple fans, it may require a fan header. Or not a fan header, my bad. A fan controller. And all of this costs more money. So if you're wondering, well, is it just because it's RGB it's costing more? Yes, but also because you're using equipment you would not need to use that requires wires you wouldn't need to have lights you don't need to have. And all of that's going to be spending money you don't need to spend. So it all kind of links in together. If you want to go down that road, know what to expect. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but if you expect it to be any different, you're going to be very disappointed. All right. So this is an ARGB cable. Oh, this looks like the main communication cable. Looks like it goes to USB on the motherboard into maybe the fan controller, an ARGB into the fan controller, and then this USB, micro USB would probably go into the block, I'm guessing. I don't know. We've got some double-sided sticky tape so we can attach our fan controller. Interesting. It looks like Tryx want us to, there's like a smooth area cut out in the shape of the tape. And on this side, it matches that same kind of texture as the top of the block here, and it tells you what all these connections are. Oh, the USB cable goes into this, I see. And then for some reason, two separate SATA power cables. Again, something you normally wouldn't be running on a regular cooler, but there you go. Got to power that RGB, got to power those fans. The block is getting everything it needs off this one cable. That's it. All this is for lighting and fans, or screen control. Maybe someday they'll give us a magic wand and we can just say a spell and we can get away from all that wiring. But, for this case, it is a large case and it should hide the wiring okay. But we're really cutting it close to the edge as far as I'm concerned as to how much further I would take this. Because anything more than what we've done, I think would make the cabling and any sort of working or diagnosing this computer much more difficult. This is fine, but I wouldn't go any further with any more RGB. Then it would become too much, in my opinion. So here we've got ARGB fan. Here we've got USB, which is clearly this cable right here. Look at all this cabling. This is more ARGB. So what it looks like is that this would go onto your motherboard fan header right here, this one, and this one would go on your motherboard's ARGB header. And that controls what the controller is going to do. And then your fans plug into the other side of the fan controller. And your water block would plug into the USB side of the fan controller. You cannot just use any fan controller. You must use the one from the manufacturer, or you will lose all that functionality. So if this breaks, this controller breaks, you'll have to get another controller from Tryx. Nobody else makes or sells a compatible fan controller. Same with NZXT, same with Corsair, same with everybody. It's their design, and nobody else can make it, or they would get the crap suit out of them. All right, so that's our USB. That's our fan header and ARGB off the board that feeds this. USB feeds this, power feed. So this is like all the input side. And then this side will be output. And that's not exactly accurate, but give you an idea. It's the right concept. As we come around back here, what you have to keep in mind is sometimes people buy cases that already have fan controllers. Well, what do you know? We've got a fan controller back here already. Now we're going to add another one. Where are we going to put it? That's problem number 2. We have room for it. We just have to figure out where we're going to stick it. However, we don't need to know that right now, nor would I even be worried about the cable management at this point because it's way too early. For all we know, the cooler's broken or we don't like it, we want to return it, etc., etc. Only when you're happy with everything, that everything's been tested thoroughly, that you know it's ready to be buttoned up, should you do any cable management, and not before then. But I do try to run the cables in a route that makes the cable management easier. Otherwise, I may end up having to unplug and reroute the cables and then retest it again that I didn't plug the cable on incorrectly, right? You don't want to find that out after you've got it all nice and clean, buttoned up, and then you have to take it all back apart again because you're off one set of pins or one cable isn't quite on all the way. So my preference is to get it done right the first time. When it comes to the ARGB, I suppose, yeah, I mean, I can see where this is going to be a little bit of a problem for us. Essentially, every fan controller needs power, and that's going to be just traditional power off your power supply. So we need power to this fan controller, and this fan controller controls these these fans, and the rear fan. That's it, just those 3 fans. I don't know why you need a controller for 3 fans. But they give you the ability to add 3 more fans that are RGB if you want to, and plug them onto the controller so you don't need to buy another controller or fan splitter. But that's what they've already done for you here. They've given you the ability to control their fans and then give you an extra one, I think. Because these 3 fans are all connected together, we should just need 1 power or 1 ARGB. Then they give you an extra one if you were to put, I don't know, fans on the other side of the radiator, for example. I don't know. I mean, I would think you could still wire them all up together. So just the case in this fan controller alone, if we didn't have a motherboard, if we didn't have a power supply, if we, well, okay, let's say we keep the power supply, just the way the case comes, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cables to manage, when normally you'd only have 3 cables to manage if these were regular fans, because ultimately that's just for 3 fans. You've got 8 cables. That's 3 for power, 3 for RGB, 1 for power, SATA power to feed the power to the controller, plus the space the controller takes. And then you need the cable that goes out to the motherboard to tie into the RGB there so that you can synchronize everything with your motherboard software. Then when you add a cooler like this, you're adding another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more cables. That's fine if you're ready for that. If you're not ready for that, save your money and avoid the RGB stuff. Because when your RGB doesn't work right, one of your fans doesn't light up right, you've got a problem nobody else without RGB would ever have. When your software is causing a blue screen that controls the RGB, you're having a problem nobody else would ever have. And you spent more money for that problem, and you will have to figure that problem out. In some cases, the solution is to download the latest version of the RGB software, and then the blue screen goes away. That often will happen after a Windows update. When it happens, ask me how I know. ASUS Aura software has burned me big time. So it doesn't mean just because you buy it from ASUS or a big name brand that you're less likely going to experience that. You will almost universally experience that, I'm telling you. It's just a matter of time before you have an RGB problem or a software related RGB problem. And you're paying more money for it and you're going to do more cable management. You better have a case that can accommodate it or you're never going to put your back panel back on. So be prepared if that's the road you want to go down. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to dissuade you from going down the road. Just want you to be ready. The more RGB you add, the more complex this gets, the more expensive it gets, and the more problems you're going to have as a result of that specific one thing. That other people who don't have that thing would never have a problem since they don't have the thing to begin with. And they wouldn't have spent as much money as you. So keep all that in mind. If that's the road you want to go down, that is the way to get there. Right? That's part of the journey. All right. And you can pish posh and say whatever. And then when it happens to you, you go, oh, that's what Carey was talking about. That's fine. Sometimes we just need to get there on our own. So without hooking this, permanently up, because I don't know where I'm going to put it yet, I can at least hook the wires up. So we've got a SATA cable already going to this controller, and it gives us 3 extras. So, I mean, it's not like we're running an extra power cable for that, but it is more cables that will eventually, we'll have to figure out how to tidy them up and get them out of the way. But clearly, these go on. That's pretty obvious. And then this is USB. That's going to go somewhere on the bottom of the board here, which, if I had to guess, probably right up the middle, right about there. Yeah, that'll work. Just plug that into the USB header on the bottom of our motherboard. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3 cables hooked up. What do we have left? We have ARGB and fan control. See that one? There's only, there's 2 wires there, just positive and negative. I think that's what that is. And what we're going to do here, it may not be positive and negative. That may be the impedance side where it's measuring just speed. So fan speed. These can go onto the board. They can go on any fan header, but they probably should go on the CPU fan, which is, let's see if we can get it all the way up here and through the, ooh, it just fits. It's not, I see what I'm doing wrong. It should go up here. Okay, that makes more sense. And then we'll just connect that one on, and somewhere on this board, probably near the CPU fan, on most modern motherboards will be an ARGB header. So this should follow the same route if we want to keep our cable management as clean as possible. And yes, there is an ARGB header. Looks like there's 2 of them on this board. Right up here on the top right side. They're not, just ran away. They're not always in the same place. There's no standard location for these. So depending on the make and model of board, you may not even have them at all. You don't need to have them. You can use separate software to control your RGB or your cooler. But if your motherboard does have RGB on it, it makes more sense for everything to tie in and to use your motherboard utility to synchronize all the RGB to whatever style you prefer. Otherwise, it just falls back into a random, typically a cycling pattern, which is fine for a lot of people. Just like what RAM will do. If you don't install software or the RAM is not compatible with your RGB software and you have RGB RAM, it'll just cycle through a rainbow of colors. And for a lot of people, that's good enough. All right, that's a whole nother problem, right? All the software you have to install. So this gets us hooked up properly. I might be able to use the fan header and RGB header on this controller and hook one controller to the other. It probably works the same either way, so it's up to you, but there are sometimes more than one way to do things. Whether or not it's any smarter or any more difficult, well, depends on the system and your definitions of those words. When it comes to hooking the fans up on the radiator, what did I do with those cables? Oh, and we've got this cable here. Oh, this is interesting. Oh. I am accustomed to this plugging into the controller, but this is yet another USB 2 header. That means that you better not have anything on your motherboard's USB 2 headers because you normally only get 2. Sometimes you only get 1, in which case you'd have to get a USB splitter for this. That's a bit of a shock, because we're already running USB to here. Why are we not then running? That's terrible. That's freaking terrible. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this, no pun intended. I don't think we need the fan controller. I really don't think we need it. We already have the fan controller here. All right, well, let's just get it hooked up and working, and then we can figure out if we have any redundancies here. I am very disappointed that you must have 2 USB 2 fan headers of your motherboard, and you must not use them for anything but your fan controller, which controls the fans and the RGB on the radiator, and then a separate USB for controlling the screen. I think that's terrible. That's an awful design, and I'm sad that I did not pay attention to any sort of reviews that mention this downside. Normally, if any hardware device you add to your computer requires a USB 2 header, it only takes one device, 1 header. There's no reason they could not have built a header splitter right into the device. Even if they had required extra power, they've already got the power coming in here. This is redundant and adds an extra cable and reduces, basically, it consumes every USB 2 header on your motherboard. If you're like most people, you only have 2. Some people have 1. Some people are already using something there, and you're going to have to make a choice which one you want. Or you could buy a USB splitter cable. Wow, I didn't see that one coming. That's a surprise. Just when you think you got it all figured out, they change it on you. So for this to run, it's got to go from the top of the board down to the bottom, and as such, I don't want it being visible from the front of the case. We'll run that from top to bottom through the back. I feel like there should be a warning on this device that if your motherboard does not have 2 USB headers on it, you cannot use this device. Or that you may have to buy extra accessories. What is this for? Where does this go? I don't see anything that this goes to. Some kind of a fan controller. I don't know what that connector is. It's not a standard connector that I've ever seen. I figured it would go into the fan controller. Oh, the fans on the radiator are proprietary. Therefore, the design, well, maybe it wouldn't be fair to say it's proprietary. It's uncommon. And we have to break it out from, I'll just show you. We have to break out what's coming off of the fans connected to the radiator. This means 1 fan. And you see how many pins are in there? Why do you think it has so many pins? Because it's basically 2 connectors in 1. So now it's all in 1 cable instead of 2. So by doing that, that's uncommon. They've given us an adapter that plugs in here, and then it breaks it back out to a standard fan and RGB header. All right, so that's what that's for. Since the fans are all that, it makes the fan wiring a lot simpler, less complicated, fewer problems because you have one connector instead of two that you got to worry about being seated correctly. And so essentially we would plug the fan header, the standard fan header into, I'm going to plug it into fan 1, I don't think it matters. And then the ARGB would go here. And that is going to send the signal through here to control our fan speed and colors with one cable. And I did push that through, didn't I? No? Well, I will now. Right there is the single cable. Just do it like that, I guess. And that will plug in like so. So because the industry has not accepted that as the standard, I consider it proprietary. You can find fans that have that header on Amazon, but good luck finding them anywhere else. Your standard fan header and standard ARGB header, they're everywhere, they're ubiquitous. That, much more difficult to find. So we really do have quite a proprietary setup here. Now, look, that's not a bad thing as long as you're aware of what you're buying and you're okay with it. I'm not okay with it. I'm kind of upset by that, but far too long I've had this for me to return it. So I'm stuck with it. I just hope it's worth it. I think we can fire this bad boy up. I think we're good to go. So, power supply off. Power cable on. We will have to download some software to control the RGB, to control that screen. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Let's just make sure the darn thing works. Part of that is also making sure we plugged everything in and we plugged it in the right places. All right. I can use my Ethernet cable here because we've already got Windows installed. The latest BIOS should still be installed. I need a keyboard and a mouse. Yeah, thank goodness we didn't try to install this with all the other RGB it had. There's just no, I mean, I could see that coming, but I just didn't. Seeing it in person versus visualizing it in my head, this whole thing would have had to come apart, which it did. But I'm glad I figured it out then. I'm just saying. Let's just put that anywhere. Okay. HDMI cable. Need an HDMI cable. There we go. HDMI. All right, are we ready for this? I don't know if I am. Let's go to HDMI 3. That'll be this guy. And let's take camera 1 and put it in a corner. Okay. Power switch on. I can put the top back on. Yeah. Let's put the top back on it. Shouldn't need that off anymore. I must have. I hit the power button with the little metal nub that sticks out here. That's hilarious. That surprised me. There we go. Yeah, it's all snapped in. That looks good. I got nothing on the screen telling me it's getting any power. That's not good. I also, oh, I see. It must have just turned itself off. All right, let's try it again. Turn it on, and I'm expecting to see something happen here. Some form of initialization. And nothing yet. Probably has to wait for USB initialization, I guess. Regardless if the screen comes on, it's a separate device. That doesn't mean our pump is not running. Oh, you know what? I'm missing the other USB cable. I guess I didn't plug that in, did I? I complained about it and then never finished it. So somewhere here, yeah, I never plugged this cable in that came off the screen. So the screen's got nothing. So I'm going to bring that cable, let's see, how do I want to route that? We'll bring it around here, up through here. And you should not do this with power on because USB has voltage on it. But if you're very careful and you get it right the first time, it's no different than plugging a USB cable in. And if you're off by a set of pins, you could cause a problem with the voltage being in the wrong place. If I show you full screen, let's do this. Let's go over to camera 1 and do a Control F. You can see what this screen does. And if you hold it at just the right angle, it should look like it's coming out of the box. And that's why it's important when I'm installing that I can see both the side and the front, because your optimal viewing angle for the 3D effect is right in the middle where they meet. Now, once we install the software, they have some 3D effect samples that we can choose, and we can create our own, etc., etc. But what I'm curious about, more than setting up the screen, is how well is it going to cool? Will this be adequate for our CPU? So let me go back over to the desktop. Let's minimize this again. And we'll take a look at, in all fairness, I should put the fan controller software on it. So because right now, I think the fans are just running based on the motherboard signal. You're here to take a look?
I am. That's pretty neato.
Yeah, well, I hope it's worth it, because
I really like that cooler. That's neat.
Well, let's see if it actually cools.
That's super unique. I like it.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to full screen over here on this, so as I can see it.
That's beautiful.
Well, we're just getting started. It does a lot more than this. Let's go to Tryx website. We'll just type in Tryx download and Tryx zone. I guess that's what we want, huh? Downloads, Canali software, or whatever that is. Panorama firmware upgrade tool. Okay, Panorama SE, Rhoda. What do I have? What about our fan controller? Where's that? We have a Panorama 360, so it's, I don't know what Canali is. I have to assume, wait a minute, unified Canali for Panorama, built-in customer service window. Okay, I guess we're gonna download Canali. There's a firmware upgrade tool for the Panorama. We don't have the Panorama 2nd edition, so that doesn't apply. Rhoda, what is Rhoda? I don't know. I'm gonna download it. Canali is a software platform that provides integrated services for Tryx hardware. You can use it to be the status of the hardware. Okay, maybe that's also the fan controller then.
Check your email.
And while we're waiting to download, I'll show you what's happening because the where my camera is right now is covering up the downloads. So let's move that out of the way. All right, let's check the email. Hey, Mark Gaines sent us a very generous PayPal gift. He said he tried sending an Amazon gift card, but it won't let me even if I use the link in the description. I think you have to go to Amazon.com and create an account. If you have an account with Amazon in Ireland, it will not work in Amazon.com. They don't prevent you from creating another account, though. You just can't share your account with Amazon located in different countries. You must have your own account at Amazon.com. Once you've created your own account at Amazon.com, you should be able to buy and send an Amazon gift card. That's the way I understand it. And if you've tried that, then I don't know what's wrong. But thank you very much. That's a very generous contribution. We appreciate you very much, Mark, joining us from Northern Ireland. We did return the mini E-ATX board. That was a used item, returned item from Amazon. And I found out I could get a board from ASRock with an 850 chipset instead of the 650 without this, the NVMe fan, because that's just a fan that's going to die. It's going to be hard to replace if you ever need one. Good luck finding one. For the exact same price from ASRock, for a newer board that won't have that point of failure that the MSI had, that was damaged, that was also $30 or $40 more. That was an older chipset. I didn't do my research very good, but that worked out for me. Essentially, it cost me the same amount for a brand new ASRock with a modern chipset than an older MSI. Both mini E-ATX and both mostly the same compatibility, except the ASRock has the newer chipset. I think that catches us up, pretty sure. Yeah. So we have a mini E-ATX prep coming up, and that'll go eventually into a mini E-ATX case. That'll be coming up probably at the end of next week, I'm guessing, depending on how this thing goes. Thank you so much, Mark. All right, let's get back over to... I've got to make it full screen so I can see what's going on. Let's just turn off camera one. We can both see it. And what I want to do is open up... Boy, oh boy. I mean, I don't know about this firmware upgrade tool. Let's just start here just because. Let's extract that. I have no idea what version of firmware I've got. Nor do I know how to apply this tool. So let's just see if it's got anything obvious here. Offline upgrade.exe. All right. Maybe it does this automatically if I install the Canali software. And this is like a manual way of doing it. The code execution is not found. Okay, that's good to know. Let's do the Canali software first. I wish the product names had some, if the software had product names in it. Like, I don't know what Canali comes from or what association it has to Tryx or Panorama 360. It's a whole different name with no association other than what the company has created. So let's just open this file. I don't need to extract it because there's only one thing in here, so I can just double click on this without extracting it. Because this in and of itself is an extractable file that was inside of an extractable file. Pretty common. Oh, we're missing Visual C? Is that what it wants? Visual C. Run. Look at all this stuff that's missing. Okay, that's not very good. And this is firmware, this is firmware, and this is setup. So if there is a prerequisite, where do we get that prerequisite from? Let's click About Software and see if they tell us, hey, you need some, like, they should be checking that during the install. This is the 3D content library. Comes over like custom software. This is what it looks like. Yeah, that looks like our control software. And I don't see any prerequisite. I don't see any link that says, hey, make sure you have this Microsoft Visual C add-on. And nor are they checking for it. They're just erroring out. That's bad programming. We have a stock Windows 11 fresh install here, so they should know better. I don't see anything warning us. And I only see 6 downloads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And half of those are firmware updates. 1 is the control software. And then whatever naked eye 3D sandbox file is, which I don't know. Nothing here about a prerequisite is even mentioned. It's completely omitted and yet absolutely required. And it doesn't automatically check during the install to offer it to you if you don't have it. Bad, bad, bad. That's just either ignorance or laziness. Let's see if it's under the FAQ. Speed effects, firmware, speed control, asset library. Well, no, that's going to be videos. That's what that is. Nothing about a prerequisite. Not here. No discussion of it, no link to it. Just too bad, figure it out for yourself. Thank you for your $350. Have a nice day. All right, I feel a little insulted. Let me go back to my downloads. Let me extract this file, maybe because I didn't extract it. Maybe that's the problem. We'll try it one more time now that it's extracted. Still would like some mention of this. See if it does. Nope, nothing different. MSVCP140. Let's find out where we get that. I have to research it on my own because they won't offer us a link, tell us what it is, or even let us know ahead of time anywhere on the website that I found that this is needed and how to acquire it if it's missing. MSVCP140.dll is part of what? Don't download it from here. You're going to find yourself in trouble. Okay, this is a Visual C++ translator, and it is a redistributable, and we're going to need that library because this is all Visual C. There's a word for it. Translation tools. Visual C++ redistributable downloads. Okay. And we want it for 64-bit right here. So Visual C redistributable x64. Why is there no link or mention of this? Once we install this, then Tryx software should work. But again, Tryx, if it detects we don't have this on our system, and why would we if Windows doesn't include it by default? Why not just bring this up automatically or bring us to a link that says click here to install it and then continue your install after or restart your install after? That's how it's supposed to be from a good manufacturer, from a good software developer. You see, it's not a big deal. It's no big deal. Now, in theory, if that's what it wants, we should be able to go back and run setup and have it work this time. No, it does not. Yikes. All right, this is not good. So the following now is for each version of supported architecture. Let's try x86. Maybe that's what it wants. We have to guess because Tryx won't tell us. Downloads. Setup. How about now? Looks like we're getting further. All right, so we need the x86 Visual C runtimes. Start with Windows, create, agree to the license agreement. Okay. And then what? I don't see any. Welcome to use Canali. Okay. Never to press twice flexible. Do you want to allow public? Yeah, that's fine. That's what will enable it to check for updates and things. So definitely want to turn that on. Oh, Rhoda is the name of the screen, I guess. I don't know where they're coming up with these names. Oh, firmware update is too low. That's what I want to see. Let's update the firmware. Now remember, there's a firmware update to the Rhoda and a firmware update potentially to the fan controller. That update was pretty quick. It says new version of Canali. Even though we just downloaded from their website is not offering us the latest version. That's sloppy. Oh, wait a minute. That appears to be a firmware update, not a software update. I'm confused because it's calling it Canali, and this is called Canali. So then maybe this is the firmware update for the fan controller. I don't know what a Canali is. Is it like a cannoli? I don't understand what a Canali has in combination with a Rhoda and what that has to do with the Panorama 360. Pick a name. This is entirely confusing. How about Panorama screen, Panorama fan controller? That would be helpful. You're just supposed to know. Osmosis is how we all learn. All right, this is obviously going to take a minute, so I'm going to get a cold Gatorade while I take a breath. You know, heaven forbid they use plain English and walk you through the setup rather than make you figure it all out, because that would have taken 10 more minutes of effort on their coding. $350 to be aggravated. Here's your parts. You figure out how they go in. You figure it out, how to install the software. I didn't know I was buying a puzzle. Tell us how you really feel, Carey. It's all right. It's just stupid. Unnecessary. What if I didn't have the experience I had? What would an ordinary user do? You'd reach out to support. That means their support's going to be really busy. They're going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours endlessly answering emails instead of just simply putting the process in the software, naming the software accordingly, and letting users just walk through obvious processes. I guess this company's too new to understand that, but when they get tired of paying for support and pissing off customers, they'll figure it out. Another way they could have figured it out is simply look at how their competitors are doing it and use that as inspiration, but they didn't do that either, because obviously it's omitted completely from thought. Be prepared. This is why I do reviews. It covers stuff. This is exactly, as long as companies keep doing this, I'll keep making videos to explain it in English to regular people. You know we're in trouble if a professional technician has to guess. It's taking a while. Everything you see here is live, unscripted, and unrehearsed, and is done in real time. So if you decide to go through this process, you know exactly what to expect. We don't live edited lives, and I don't show anything other than real life on my channel. With some exception, there will be some edited content, but people who think my videos are too long are obviously living a life that's too long. it's definitely doing something. I hear the fans cranking up and slowing down, so whatever it's doing, it's taking some resources. I don't have any issue with firmware updates. That anytime anything gets a firmware update, I'm excited that the company hasn't abandoned me. That means they've improved something. So it doesn't bother me at all, and I appreciate that it's automatically doing it instead of expecting me to know whether or not I need a firmware update. So at least they did that well. Guess I'll look in the chat room while we're waiting here. Mark Gaines said he had the same problem. Oh, because yeah, Mark Gaines installed the Tryx cooler. And what about, how did you get around figuring out the visual library? Did you just know, or did you contact support? How did you get, I forgot. Mark Gaines did install this cooler a couple of months ago, I want to say. Right? Didn't you, Mark? Sorry, I'm just catching up with your comments now. Looks like our firmware's update is done, so let me go back full screen over here. Upgrade completed, or update completed, okay. Rota settings, what does that do? Colors, loops, steady, breathing, flashing. So that must be the RGB, I guess. Let's do two things. Let's bring up the visual side of what's going on with the computer when I select different options here. Back. That back. Go over here. And let's put this, I don't know where I can put it. Let's just put it up. Oh. Best I can do. Something's going to get covered up here one way or another. So what do we have? This option. I'm guessing it's changing the RGB on everything. Dark. It's dark too. No idea. I'm trying to figure out if it's controlling, I'm guessing it's only controlling the radiator fans. What is radar? Do I double click it? What do I do? Or is it just changing the screen? Let's just go full screen over here because I need you to look at what's happening over here. Don't worry about what I'm just going through the options, all right? So unfortunately, I'd have to give you two screens. Let's do will close-up work on that. Oh, we're so close. Let me adjust the close-up camera so we can see what's happening here. Go a little bit more up. More that way. Can I go more that way? It's going to let me. At some point, I'm going to run into an obstruction there. I think that's about as good as we're going to get it. All right, now if we're looking at the angle, I need it there a little longer. Let me go back over to, what am I going to do that? Let's try a different option. Let's go light wave. Is that changing what's on the screen, or is it changing? No, it must be changing the RGB, I'm guessing. All right, let's go back over to HDMI 3 and full screen. There, now I can see. Lighting, speed. So Panorama must be controlling our graphics. Okay, let's try that one out and see what that looks like. Maybe I've got to hit apply or something. Nothing's changed. Save, is that it? Nothing's changing for me. Hold on, let me make this bigger so I can see it better. Screen on, reset, set display. Oh, I see, we can put CPU temperature, GPU temperature, CPU frequency, usage. Don't need the GPU temp. Save that. I guess it overlays. So it did give us the temp on the screen, but it's not giving us the graphic. What do I have to do? Oh, I click on that up there. Okay. Now, let's go back to camera 2, the close-up camera. See what that looks like. I'm thinking I got too much light in here. Let me cut some lighting. I think I'm getting some reflection. Turn off the studio lights. See if that looks any. Kind of feel like that's the optimal angle, but it's really washed out. Let's go back over to output here.
Thank you for turning off the lights.
What does this do? Trying to find the angle that it, where the optimal angle is for that 3D
where
effect.
I'm standing.
Really?
Yes.
It looks like it's coming out at you?
Yeah.
Why am I not able to? Oh, it kind of looked like it a little bit. It's more this way.
That's super neat. Oh. You gonna turn on the platform?
Wasn't seated. All right, let me go back over to three. Let's go back over here. See what this one does.
That's really, really cool. I like that.
What about this one? I don't seem to be catching the effect. I don't. You're seeing it differently, I guess.
I am seeing it.
Let me go stand where you're standing, because it's all about perspective on this.
Stand right here.
Yeah.
Turn around.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, that looks like it's coming out of the screen. So what I'm curious about is why we're not capturing that on camera. All right, let's go to the next one. See if I can zoom in on it some more. For some reason, it's got a weird washout on the camera. Is that better or worse? Let's go to the next one. What do we got next? Is the right mouse, Carey? Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. Okay. Let's go to the next one. I like the choices here. Plenty to choose from. Plus there's user communities. That have created their own animations that you can download or create your own and share it with the community as well. Angle is really important on this. Let's go back to the next one. Sometimes it'll look like it's coming right out of the screen in person, but I'm not getting that effect here. I'm getting an effect of depth, like it's going deep inside the computer, but it doesn't look like it's coming outside of the screen, which is what I'm trying to show you. And because I'm not familiar with these, some of them have a more of an effect than others, at least in person when you're looking at it. So I'm hoping one of these will really showcase that sense that they're coming out, not just inside of the screen. That cycle us all the way through now. Let me see. Starting to look familiar or not. Whoa. Yeah, just kind of catch on a little bit there. All right. Yeah, angle, that's why it's really important you have it lined up correctly. That's freaky. All right, let's take a look again over at any more options, because I'm not sure I've seen that one before. This is what? Oh, just a couple of balls. That can have a great 3D effect, by the way. Yeah, that's pretty simple. And then we go back to this first one that we couldn't really see very well. At least I couldn't with the lights on. All right, well, you get the gist of it there, right? Let me just set it to something. Which one do I want? No, not that one. This one. Yeah, let's do that one. And then as for system information, I think it's on the screen, but it's in the wrong color, and that's why we're not seeing it. It's way off to one side of the screen. And what is this new version it's talking about? Something else is new? Lots of updates here. Again, I'm okay with updates, but wow, everything? New version of... Okay, let's grab it. I appreciate it's making me aware, not making me go and look and make that determination of what version I have, what version's available, and is one newer than the other. So I'm not complaining about the updates. I'm just surprised that everything needs an update, right? That's the third update we've done so far, along with not providing us with that redistributable that is a prerequisite requirement to the software being installed. That does not come with Windows 11 by default. So I don't know why they wouldn't think that you, why would they think you have that already? I don't know. So while we're waiting on that, let me go back over to camera 1. And I guess we can start turning some lights back on. Anyway, you got the idea of what makes this cooler different. Leon Lee and others are coming out with coolers with bent screens like that for the same reason. I think Tryx is the one who was first, and then, you know, other manufacturers go, oh, we should do that too. They seem like they're doing pretty well. They're getting a lot of attention. We want some attention. And I think over at Computex, I think it was Leon Lee, if I'm not mistaken, had a bent screen that rotated left and right, like an oscillating fan. I guess the idea is that at some point it will align with that perspective if what's happening on the video is coming out at you as it's rotating. It seems stupid to me. Pick a direction and leave it. But, you know, they're experimenting. It's new tech. Let me see what you guys have to say in the chat. Let me refresh over here. Just waiting on my screen refresh, guys. There's my chat room back. Okay, good. Nope, now the browser crashed. David Graham says the astronaut was the best one. Patrick Manny says he sees the 3D, and Michael Lavelle says it's working for some of them. David Graham says he's seeing the 3D. Very cool. And anyway, that gives you the idea of it, right? And then as far as how well does it cool? Well, we need to figure that out because we've got it installed and working, but does that mean it's a good cooler just because it looks pretty? I need to see evidence of that. So let's go back over here. And is it still updating? In process of updating. Wow, these updates can take a while. Okay, well, I'm okay with that. I'll let it take whatever it needs. And in the meantime, if you have any comments or questions for me, while we're waiting for that to complete, this will be the time. If I missed any comments or questions earlier you wanted me to see, this is the time to put them back in the chat again. Bill said he has a friend that needs help with his computer, and he asked his friend if he had a backup. And his friend said no. So he says, I'm doing a backup tonight with the Cronus. Well, it's good to have friends like you, Bill, I'll tell you. Mark Gaines says he had to figure out where to get that runtime library the same way I did, and he thought it was very frustrating. So not just me then, huh, Mark? We'll make sure we give Tryx some feedback. Michael Lavelle says, I'm a noob programmer, and even I know how to do that prerequisite check and how to offer it. It is simple, very simple stuff here. Let alone, you know, they didn't need to name everything and disassociate it with the main product name, because I don't know how a customer would know or a consumer would know that these unrelated product names are related to one another and dependent upon one another. So the idea that you might need a USB splitter would have been good to know before the purchase. The fact that you need that Visual C++ redistributable, that would have been good to know. It would have been good if it were offered. In the same way that we're getting these firmware updates. It should have been no different. It should automatically happen. And we should know Canali is related to Panorama 360 and Rhoda. The naming conventions are so confusing and so disassociated with what we purchased. I would have no idea that they went together or were reliant upon one another. Raven 4K says, nothing wrong with eating Father's Day pizza. I think any day that ends in the letter Y is a good day for eating pizza. I see Buster was saying you're a bad boy for eating your father's pizza. Yeah, well, his father's got to be used to it by now, right? Is this update seriously still going on? This is taking a concerning amount of time, like something's wrong. Rhoda is in the process of updating. Please do not close the software. It'd be nice if they gave us an idea of how much time we should expect this to take, even a worst case scenario, to alert us if we should be concerned or not. Should we be concerned at 5 minutes? Should we be concerned at 5 hours? I don't know. They won't tell us. Once again, if you buy their products from Tryx, prepare to enjoy your puzzle. Because they are, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and I'm going to assume it's unintentionally, leaving us in the dark with regards to naming their software the way they have, leaving us without the distributable, the Visual C++ that we require, not giving us any idea of what sort of progress we're making or if we're frozen. I don't know. I really don't know. I guess they think that's okay. But we're going to follow what it says on the screen because it doesn't say anything else. So I guess until further notice, we'll leave this up. And if that's 10 days from now, I guess, I don't know. I mean, at some point you got to realize something ain't working. But if you interrupt it too early, you could make it so you have to send it in for repair. So I'm going to just give it time. It's an awfully long time. Compared to what we've already done, it's taking much longer than the other updates. Jim Kinney said he got a Feijing S880 M.2 and a Ugreen enclosure. It's his new local backup drive. I hope it works. I don't know why anybody would put a Generation 4 M.2 drive in an enclosure. Because you're paying extra for a faster drive, and then you're slowing it down to USB speeds when you could have just bought a Gen 3 drive. But, I mean, it should work. I just think you spent more money than you needed to. A Gen 3 drive would have been cheaper. It would have gone in the NVMe enclosure and not run any slower. Just FYI. Still updating? Still updating. See, I can't really run the cooler test until this update's done because this could affect our test results. And I don't know why it's taking so long. I think it's frozen up. I think it's duplicating an update it already did, which if it's firmware shouldn't matter, but something seems wrong to me. Let me go over to full screen on this side here. And is anything else? Are we getting any notices down here for anything? No. Anything here? No. I mean, it's still spinning like it's doing something, but is it progressing or is it stuck? It's anybody's guess. How much time should we give it? guess I'll give it a few more minutes just to be sure, but that's, you know, for a fast computer with a lot of memory and a super fast internet connection, this doesn't seem right to me. Patrick Manny says we can check the task manager. Mark Gain says, I've already sent Tryx an email to complain they've not responded yet. Well, that's good to know when you're spending this kind of money from a cooler, what kind of customer service you should expect. Yeah, I suppose we can look in the task manager, but that may not give us much info because we don't know how much processing should this be taking. And, you know, does it always use the same amount of processing, or during certain parts of an update, does it use more or less resources at any given time? But if we hit, let's see, Control-Alt-Delete, go to the task manager, and let's look at the system resources, CPU. Yeah, Canali is running. It's doing something. That's very concerning. It really seems stuck to me. Canali's using the most CPU resources right now, so I guess we'll leave it running. I don't know how much it normally runs when it's just the application. Is it running more now than before it was doing the firmware update? Or is this what it normally does anyway? That is a very long time. Much, much, much longer than what would be considered expected during a firmware update of a cooler or a screen, or software for that matter. That's, I mean, I can download my Power Director software, download the whole package and install it in less time than this on a computer that's not this fast. There's no way that's right. It's got to be stuck. It's got to be. And by the way, the screen doesn't tell us anything. We have no indication of anything happening here. So I think I can close the software without any worry. And if I break it, then guess what? They're going to be doing an RMA because this is not normal. Okay, let's run it again now. Tells me if it's, let's see if it still says I need an update. Still works. Finds the panorama. All of our system specs. Change the color of the system display to be white text. Is that what it's doing? Can't move that. No, it's going to show it on the left only. Right, well, at least I can see it now. Customizations. Full screen, media library, you can upload a file, screen splitting if you want to have one image on one side and one image on the other, you can do that too. Treat it like two screens. Leave it on full screen play mode. Let's just shuffle them. Keep it interesting. Back it to home. Save. Panorama. Dashboard. All right, so let's do this. Let's close this out and restart the computer. Let's see what happens here. Here we go. To the desktop. And that Canali software should auto run, right? It's going to come up automatically. There it goes. In a minute, it should offer us the panorama in our listing here. There it is. But where's my fan controls and RGB controls? Is that what the firmware update was doing? Don't know. So, then the next question is, say settings, temperature, start with Windows, close button, session firmware, check for update. No update. Check for update to the app. Version. Okay, at least we can check them manually there instead of relying on automatic. But I did have another option here, didn't I? And that would imply interrupting a firmware update on the controller might make the controller unable to communicate with us. But let's not jump to any conclusions yet. Let's run hardware info. Let's see what kind of temps we're getting on this bad boy before we go any further. Not really worried too much about anything else if the cooler doesn't work well. Wow, that looks really fantastic. Oops, oh, that's distance, that's why. Let's go the other one. All right, no, that still looks really good. We're in the 30s, that's fantastic at idle. All right, and then let's do Cinebench. Here we go. We'll usually see the hottest temps in the first 90 seconds to 2 minutes of this test. And everything is so far looking fantastic. We have hit 84 already on, oddly enough, an efficiency core, which is weird. Normally your performance cores are the ones that are going to get hot. Okay, we're climbing up a little bit at 88. We can go to 105. I don't want to see 105. If we stay under, let's call it 95, since that still gives us 10 degrees. Preferably stay under 90. And I only raise that number up by 5 degrees. I normally would say 85, but normally 100 degrees Celsius is your thermal junction, but these CPUs are 105. So we're already at 90 right now on one core. I don't know why that one core, well, and the one next, the three of them, all efficiency cores. For the efficiency cores to run the hottest, so 10, 11, 12, and 13, 4 of them, I don't expect that. I expect the performance cores to be the hotter ones. What's our voltages on our PL1 and PL2? Are they still at 125 on PL1? No. We're on 250 at PL1. That's a problem. Intel specifications. What I want you to understand about PL1 and PL2 is if PL1 and PL2 are set to be exactly the same, then you have neither. You simply have a power level. It is neither power level 1 nor is it ever power level 2. They are both just power level if they're both the same. If you have a set of steps and those steps don't go up and the steps don't go down, then I would argue you don't have any steps. So this is a real problem here. And the fact that ASRock considers this normal, and ASRock stopped returning my emails. They were unable to provide me with any verifiable official statement from Intel. And when I called them out on it, they stopped responding. So let's stop the test because I want to show you the difference this makes. We're what? How long did I let that run? I don't know. Basically 4 minutes down here on the timer. And the hottest temp we saw was 90 in 4 minutes, all right? So let's close everything. Let's go into the BIOS. And let's be ultra nerdy and manipulate some technical information buried deep in the bowels of the BIOS that no ordinary consumer would ever even know to look for, know what it's supposed to be, know how to change it, or understand why. Most users will choose a default setting for a power profile, and there is no default power profile on ASRock, Asus, MSI, or Gigabyte that matches Intel specs on the website. That's publicly available for everybody to see. I don't mind if they have different power profiles. That's fine. But we are locked into a performance profile here with no option to take it out of performance mode. I find that really offensive. Let's go to advanced settings up here. Let's go to our overclock tweaker. Let's scroll to, where did they put it? Is it under CPU config? And we're looking for power level 1, something where the number's on the right. Might be in the wrong section here. Shouldn't be that far down. Every BIOS is a little bit different too, so it's not like it's always in the same place. Speed step, you know, a lot of people will say turn that stuff off. I think here we go. So our long duration, that's our PL1, that should be at 125. So just push 125. Don't you love how that shows up on the screen? And then push enter. Power level 2, or the short turbo power, momentary, is at 250. You see the long duration maintained. This is also an important consideration. This should be the default option as a standard Intel default. Anything beyond these specs are possible, but you'll do so at a less efficiency, more power consumption, higher cost of electricity, and you'll need a much, much more aggressive cooler. All right? It also degrades your CPU faster, so if you plan on keeping your CPU for 10 years and you run the defaults out of ASRock, Asus, Gigabyte, or MSI, and you don't manually adjust that, expect to see some class action lawsuits in the future. We'll save changes and exit. Now, when we run the exact same test, I want you to notice how significant the power difference not the power difference, but the temperatures are. The fans will be quieter. And yes, our end results will be slightly lower than if we turbo it up. Your car doesn't run as fast if you disengage the turbo, but your turbo shouldn't be on at every single moment, right? Imagine trying to drive a car that goes from 0 to 60 in 1 second. You'd be smashing into everything all the time. You'd be the most dangerous driver on the road. But this is what enthusiasts do with their computers, and it's complete nonsense. It's as though they're making up for something missing in their personal life. So I don't agree with it. I don't belong to that school of thought. I want computers that will last, be reliable, be secure, and last a long time without needing support calls for loud fans or expenses for more expensive coolers, because we're trying to push the thing harder for a longer period of time than the engineers designed it to do. All right? And if you don't work in a career where you are responsible for this, you can set your computer on fire for all I care. But to suggest other people do that is dangerous and very expensive. So I want value. This computer will run exactly the way advertised by Intel with regards to performance. You're not losing any performance. What you're doing the other way is you're gaining extra performance, but at a cost of a cooler and degradation of your CPU. You're just paying for it differently. So as we run the same test and utilizing the same software, we've hit 84 degrees maximum so far. Let's let this run 4 minutes and see what happens. Which chip hit 84? Back over to the efficiency core again. That's, yeah, these same 4 efficiency cores are very hot. Weird. All right, let's keep an eye on it. And in the same 4 minutes, will we hit 90? That's what I want to know. Because if we scroll down and look at our power profiles here, we can see PL1 is now verified at 125, and PL2 is verified at 250. That's the way Intel recommends they're set, and no motherboard manufacturer that I'm aware of offers that as an option to an end user, let alone sets it correctly. And if you own an ASRock, MSI, Gigabyte, or what did I say, MSI, ASRock, Gigabyte, or Asus motherboard, and you have no default power profile on your Intel chip that matches the Intel specs, I would write in and complain about it. Maybe if they hear enough complaints, they'll do something. What ASRock told me is, well, everybody else is doing it. Literally, they said, well, Asus and MSI and Gigabyte are all doing that, so that's why we do it. There's a whole jumping off a bridge thing my mother used to tell me. Well, if everybody else was doing it, would you do it? Look how much more steady our temperatures are. We're about 2 minutes into the test so far. It hasn't budged any higher than 84. And we're getting exactly the peak performance out of this that Intel says we should expect. Only if you overclock it to achieve more performance do you lose your efficiency, do you degrade your CPU over time much faster, and do you end up spending a lot more in electricity for very little performance benefit in return. You're spending a lot more to get just a little tiny bit more. Would you like to buy this $50 for $50? Fair deal, right? 50 bucks for 50 bucks, fair trade. Would you like to buy 60 bucks for 175? No, you wouldn't. Then why would you do this other thing? That's what they're doing. They're spending all this extra money just to get a little teeny tiny back in performance. It's not worth it. Not to mention degrading your CPU faster. Not to mention needing a higher end cooler and more fans or louder fans. It's all more money, more money, more money just to get 7% more, 10% more. But you're spending 70 to 150% more to get there, even in operational cost of electricity. Who does this? Imagine you had an office with 70 computers in it, and how much that would add to your electric bill and the heat in that room, not to mention the noise level. No company in their right mind would do this at a mass scale. And that's, in my opinion, as a professional computer technician,
The 125 and 250 is what Intel says it should be, and ASRock, Gigabyte, MSI, and Asus should follow Intel's recommendation, and they are welcome to offer their own performance profiles, but they should not be the default ones. And the default ones they're setting are exceeding Intel specs. They do not offer Intel specs. The end user must go into the bowels of the BIOS, do the research, and make that adjustment on your own. It's pretty messed up. We're over 4 minutes in this test, and we've never exceeded 84 degrees. That is a massive difference. We're much more stable. We're much more efficient. We're not torturing the heck out of our CPU. It does peak up to higher voltage as necessary and then comes back down, just like the turbo on a car. That's how it's supposed to work. By setting PL1 and PL2 to the same voltage, you are disabling PL1 and PL2. You just are simply having a PL. Why would Intel put PL1 and PL2 in and then set them both to the same value? Think about it. It doesn't make any sense. It completely obliviates any difference between the two, negating why they exist. You have made their existence redundant. If one does the same thing as the other, what do you need them both for? You don't. So good luck outsmarting the engineers on that one, folks. And the motherboard manufacturers are just as guilty of this ignorance as everybody else. So I want to shake people and go, look at what you're doing. And when I call them out on it, they stop responding to my emails instead of giving me a direct answer. That was the professional response from ASRock, was to stop responding, and they could not provide me with anything as evidence to justify this other than to say, well, Asus, Gigabyte, and MSI all do it. That's why we do it. It's not just us. I don't care. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you. Tell me how you can justify this. Oh, Intel says that's where we should set it. Show me that document, because I can show you the document where Intel says not to do that. Here it is. And they said, we can't show you the document. It's under an NDA or a non-disclosure. Oh, you're a liar. That is an absolute lie. NDAs are used for products that are not released yet, to keep it secret until they're ready to show it to the public. This is a product that's been out since last year. There's no NDA. Liars. They are flat out liars. I said, give me a document number, because I know some people at Intel and I can verify if this is true. And they just, that's when they came back and said, well, Asus and Gigabyte and MSI do it. What does that have to do with my question? Do I sound pissed off? Because I'm being treated like an idiot. And I'm trying to help them, trying to make them aware. You shouldn't be doing what the others are doing. You're screwing your customers over. And customers don't even know. But ask me how I really feel. All right, let me get back over to camera one here for a moment. I think that kind of wraps it up for us for today. I'm going to power this off when we're done today. I'm going to give that fan controller time to reset. And I want to look more into the firmware on that. If need be, I will create an RMA to send that fan controller back if the firmware update bricked it. It's still functioning, don't get me wrong, but any communication with it seems to have stopped. Sometimes simply draining the power, literally unplugging it for about 10 minutes, may restore it. Otherwise, I will reach out to the folks at Tryx and say, what's going on here? We could, in theory, since nothing's going to the water block has its own power from the motherboard and USB to the screen. Well, I don't even think we need that controller. We could just plug into the motherboard and use the motherboard RGB software, because this RGB up here that you can't see is not matching everything else. See how it's flickering like with a red around here? These are not. These are on a different color pattern. So we want it to communicate with the ASRock lighting controls. And the only reason I would want to use the Tryx software would be just for the screen. So that fan controller appears to be 100% optional. But if that's the only RGB you've got in your system, then you'd use the Tryx software. So I'm not worried about it either way, but that firmware update shouldn't be taking that long, and I wasn't going to sit and wait for a half an hour. That's something's broken or not coded correctly for a firmware update to take that long. So I am convinced the firmware update broke it, not us. Or it simply needs to be powered down, let it sit without power. I don't mean off, I mean unplugged for a good 10 minutes, and then see if it comes back to life. It could go that way, 50-50, we'll see. Dustin Fuller says, great show as always, Carey. Thank you, Dustin. Ghostly Lurker said, PL1 and PL2 are both set for 220 on my MSI laptop. Laptops are different. Laptops are different. I'm not talking about laptops. Desktop CPUs and laptop CPUs are two very different things. When you're buying a mini PC or a laptop or anything with a mobile chip, that mobile chip is soldered down. You cannot change it. On a motherboard like this, you can change that CPU out. And different CPUs have different PL1 and PL2s. If we bought a board that had a soldered in chip, they could define what the proper PL1 and PL2s are for it, especially since they're also providing the cooler on a mini PC or a laptop. That's why you don't change that on a mini PC or a laptop. That's a mobile platform. That's not what we're discussing. Just because you see Jimmy do something on a desktop, do not assume that applies to mobile platform. It does not. Be clear. I've talked about this so many times, I'm a little frustrated that I have to keep saying it over and over again. Desktop mobile chips, laptop and mini PC mobile chips, like an RTX 4060 on a mobile platform, is not the same. It is not the same as an RTX 4060 that you would plug into a desktop. These are two very different things, and different rules and performance ratings apply, as do different prices. You cannot compare them and say, well, if I'm doing it on the mobile, I need to do it on this. No, no, no. No, that's going to get you in trouble. Okay? I want to prevent any confusion, and I'll keep saying it every time I see it in the chat room. I will keep reminding people who haven't heard me mention this dozens of times in the past. So I'll say it again as needed. And for everybody else who keeps hearing it over and over, I apologize, but I don't want these folks to just continue on making that same mistake over and over again. If we see it, we'll catch it and nip that in the bud before it gets worse. Andy says, thank you, Mr. Holzman and Ms. Marlena. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us. Let me go back over. I think this is done on test 1. So let's go back over here. Yeah, and we've got our final score on test 1. So 29,893 puts us pretty damn close to a Threadripper. And for anybody to say that's not good enough performance, buy a better CPU. Justifying torturing your CPU and spending way more for a cooler just to keep your CPU cool, and paying more for electricity just so you can kill your CPU sooner, and to say it's worth it for the extra 2%, you living in a world I don't live on that world, and I don't have the luxury of the money, and I don't have the tolerance of the noise and the electric bill to justify that. It's ridiculous in my opinion, and you're going to hear that over and over and over, only from enthusiasts. You will not hear that from real working computer technicians, because they'd be out of a job if they did that in the real world. Just telling you. So I get a little frustrated. It's just common sense. Now, I'm going to shut this off just to show you. We're going to run this together. That sometimes you have to cut power, especially on something like a firmware update, in order to get the electronics to reset properly. And when we shut a computer off, we're still having power come in from here. So in order to cut power entirely, we need to remove this and allow for the capacitors. And there are capacitors not only on the motherboard, not only in the power supply, but also there are small capacitors quite often found in these fan controllers. So we're just going to let those sit for a minute and give it enough time to let those capacitors drain. Usually modern capacitors will drain in about 20 seconds. So if we let it sit a while, we can be absolutely certain, without a question or doubt, they were definitely drained if we're waiting multiple times that. and then plug it back in, turn it back on, let everything re-energize, and see if it comes back to life. Also, you want to let it cool off too, right? Things don't just cool off in 20 seconds. They're not going to get back to room temperature anyway, not that soon. And while that's not typically going to solve a problem, it definitely can reassure you that that's no longer a possibility. And Bill Sony says, great show. Thank you, Carey and Mara. Thank you, Bill. What am I doing? Come on, mouse. There we go. All right, we're going to try one more time. I will let this sit longer, but just for the fact that we're going to wrap up the show. It's already 4 o'clock here. I feel like that probably is long enough anyway. But let's turn it back on, and let's try one more time to see if that fan controller comes back or not. Another thing we can do is unplug it from the USB port and plug it back in again. Stuff like that can wake things back up. And I am very concerned that the firmware update, something was wrong with it. I can't imagine a firmware update legitimately taking that long. And if the company says, yeah, it does take that long, then that means they're making some pretty unusual product if they're using parts that are that slow, right? Compared to who? Like anybody else. But it is working. The fan controller is working. We just can't communicate with it. Let's go back over to this. Oh, look, it already booted. And look, the fan controller came back. Right there is Rhoda. So that's our fans. That was the part that was missing. And this is just, listen, I have a lot of people that want to watch a 3-hour video and pick out 30 seconds of something I may have missaid or misunderstood. And that's all they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the 2 hours and 59 minutes where that didn't happen. When I tell you you can unplug things and they'll reset where they otherwise don't, and then I demonstrate it live on camera, very rarely do I hear anybody say, great work demonstrating that in real time and unscripted. I don't typically get credit for that. Instead, people only watch the video to look for somewhere they can correct it. That's just not a behavior that's welcome here, and if you do that, I'm simply going to remove you from ever commenting again. Like, I've had enough of it. I'm not perfect, and I don't mind if you want to gently point out if I've misspoken. There's a way to do that where it's not offensive and insulting. On the other hand, in most cases, I already know what I did, and I cannot go back on a live video and fix it, so I don't know what you're expecting to see as a result. Because there's been, within the last 6 weeks, an inundation of people behaving that way, if you have something positive to say, anything complimentary, anything nice and polite, please do leave your comment. If you have genuine questions I can answer, please do ask. All right, I'll wrap it up. And we're good. So we didn't break anything, despite the warning on the software telling us not to shut it down with the firmware. Clearly, something was wrong, and it's working now. So, while I don't necessarily advise you not follow the on-screen instructions, as a working computer tech, I am prepared to handle that consequences. I accept responsibility, okay? And that was a risk that I felt was justifiable, and it turns out I was completely correct in my assumption, but I could have been wrong. And if I had been wrong, I'm willing to accept that. That would have been my fault. So if you're not okay with those terms, then don't override what the screen is telling you. If you don't follow my steps the way I show them, and then you're trying to figure out why your thing isn't working the way I've shown, try following the steps the way I show them if you want to get the results that I show as well. I don't know how you would expect one against the other, but yes, don't expect the same results I get if you will not follow my steps. That doesn't mean you won't be successful. But if you're not successful, I can tell you why. Okay, let me go back over here one more time. And let's take a quick look here at the open source projector. So yeah, whatever I change these RGB, like let's say I put this to flashing, right? Is it flashing? It's turning on and off, and it's not communicating with the motherboard. So in other words, if I come over here to, let's go back to camera 1. I just want to show you what it's doing. Those fans are in a world of their own. They are not following the same synchronization as everything else. For that to happen, I'm probably going to have to install the ASRock lighting software. And then once that's installed, if we have this fan controller plugged into the ARGB of our motherboard, which we do, then it should get instruction from that software. But if we override it with the Panorama software, that's where things get messy. There's also third-party, like shareware utilities, GitHub utilities to control RGB on the video card, on the RAM. Not all RAM, by the way, will talk to all motherboards, but the newer the board and RAM are, the more likely that's not going to be a compatibility issue. The older your board is, the more cables it takes. You know, the older the hardware is, because things have always improved. So the number of cables and the software communication and any sort of interaction between them has gotten better over the years. So even just LED lighting from 3 years ago is far more improved in communication and in wiring and compatibility in just 3 years' time. And that's the other insult to spending the money on this stuff, because there's still no standard that's accepted universally. We're working our way towards that, and that means that as you buy other RGB devices, they may install completely differently, and then may not communicate with your older RGB devices until that standard is accepted and everybody follows it. Know what to expect before you spend your money on it. And if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with you being surprised about it. Mark Gaines says that's the same thing mine is doing, Carey, with the fan controller disappeared. Well, make sure your USB cable is plugged in correctly. If you're using a USB splitter, it may not work. The USB splitter may not be working. So whatever you're using the USB splitter for, move it to the other header on the motherboard. In other words, the screen here, why is my screen's not on, is it? Why is my screen not? I just noticed that. Hold on. Hold that thought. What am I missing? Wouldn't it automatically default when it's... Oh, maybe because I unplugged it, it lost its settings, and it just fell to default. And you guys said you liked the astronaut, right? Where's that astronaut? This guy here is the one you like? Let's click it. There we go. Okay. And let's go back over to camera 1. Anyway, USB splitters. If you have your USB splitting between this and the fan controller, this may require a USB header all by itself. It may be taking up so much power that you're not getting enough juice over to the controller. So give this its own fan header all by itself. Then use your USB splitter on the fan controller and whatever other USB device you have. If it still doesn't work, then just for the sake of experimentation, Mark, unplug the other thing that your USB header needs, remove the splitter altogether, and just plug this into its own header and the controller into its own header, and see if the problem goes away. If it's, you know, you can see it in your Panorama software. Or, finally, you can get rid of the fan controller and just plug the fan adapter coming off the back here, the RGB in the fan. You can get rid of this in this. You can get rid of this whole thing. Just plug these two onto your motherboard and just use your motherboard, and you can get rid of this. I don't even know why that's there, quite frankly. On an older system that has no RGB, like on the board, I guess that makes sense. But on the other hand, why does this have an ARGB header to connect to the board? So yeah, this is totally optional, and I wish I could have bought this whole kit without that and saved a few bucks, because I'm probably going to end up ripping it out. And that will free up that other USB port. That's the main reason I would do it. Thank you, Mark, by the way. Very generous contribution today. And Charlie Purdy as well. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to Jim Kenny for your Amazon gift card. And thank you for all your super chats that came in today from... I gotta go back and look. Craig Casabona, NCG. Thank you for your super chat, along with Charlie Purdy and our good friend Buster out there in Scotland. As always, generosity is profoundly generous. Generosity is generous. Good one, Carrie. Thank you, Buster. Thank you to Charlie Purdy again for renewing his membership. He's now been a member for 12 months. Right on. 1 year anniversary on Father's Day. Look at that. Thanks, Dad. I don't know how old Charlie is. I could be his dad. I don't know. Ask your mom. All right. I mean, has there been a better day for dad jokes than on Father's Day? Speaking of which, do you know why melons can't have weddings? Sorry, I screwed that up. Do you know why melons have weddings? Why do melons have weddings? Because they cantaloupe. You know, I've got a new pen that can write underwater. It can also write a lot of other words too. Okay. Yeah, it's so stupid. What do you call a Frenchman wearing sandals? Philippe Philip. Wow, that was bad. All right, those are on behalf of Mitch Morrison, since he's not joining us today for obvious reasons. I will do these in his behalf. You know who won the neck decorating contest? It was a tie. Wow. Okay, that's enough. Enough Father's Day torture for all of you. And Mark, if I can help you at all, reach out to our email. If you guys have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us. Please do so using only this email address here on the screen. That is the best way if you want to get a response. If you use any other way to contact me, you may not get a response. And the only exception would be as if we've already been talking and that's been an ongoing conversation, and at least in 2025, then don't change what you're doing. But if you haven't reached out this year, please do so using this email address. And if I need to redirect you to a different email address, we're separating out viewer questions from business questions, right? Somebody wants to buy something, they want to engage with us in business. We're trying to keep these two things separate, and we certainly appreciate your cooperation in sending your emails to the right location. And we can promise you a reply if you send it to the correct email. I hope that's not asking too much. And I guess that's going to wrap it up for me for today. Whoops, where'd my screen go? Yeah, I think I'm caught up over here. Thank you for watching. We'll be back live tomorrow, as we are every Monday, for our members-only content. That starts at 1 o'clock, as always. If you're a member here, this content is only available for members to participate and watch after the fact. That's the way those videos stay forever. It's my way of showing our members my appreciation, and my way to encourage the general public who feels like, hey, I'd like to see more, help us financially so we can do more, and we will. Fair's fair, and I'm trying to make it fair for everybody. I really am. And without taking on sponsorships where corporations dictate what I'm allowed to tell you, such as what we saw with Ugreen. And if you go back and look at any of the other Ugreen reviews, does anybody mention the lack of a guest account? It's pretty obvious to me, given that I use a guest account on every other NAS, ever, whether it's TerraMaster, Synology, QNAP, ASUS Store, whoever. Only Ugreen doesn't have it. And I'm hoping it's just an oversight that maybe other content creators never realized before. But I'm also thinking if you needed their permission to publish the video, maybe they prevented the content creator from saying that. How will we know? That's the problem when you take on corporate deals. And as long as I have the financing of the community, I'll never find myself in that position, and you never have to wonder if I've been paid to say or not say something. Okay? Why would I otherwise? That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks to Mara, of course, for all of the work she does, doing all of the administrative work, the thumbnails, the video descriptions, answering your emails. That email address I just sent you, she's the one who's going to get it. She's the one who's going to be on that more so than me, where I'm busy doing other things, and I might check my email in 2 days, 3 days. Maybe I won't even see it. That's why it needs to go to her first. And that's part of what she does. It's part of her daily routine. And that's why, as long as you follow those steps, you will get a response. But you have to type the email address correctly. And what else? Oh, our friends at SCD Keys. We worked out a deal to make sure you guys save money, that get legitimate Windows and Office keys using the coupon code CAREY. I don't make a commission off of that, so it's there if you want to use it. You're buying from a reputable company that has support for 6 months after the sale. If you think you can save a few bucks getting it from a shady seller and roll the dice, I'm not telling you not to. I just can't run my business that way. If you want to know where I buy license keys for Windows and Office for my clients that are legal, legitimate, and have support so I'm not screwed, you're going to get it from the same place I get it. You're going to pay the same price I pay. I'm not holding anything secret from you guys. Not my name, not my face. Not any backroom deals. Fully transparent. I'll tell you what I like, tell you what I don't like. And if you appreciate the value of that and how rare it is to find that on YouTube, please support us. That'll wrap it up for me. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Father's Day and the remainder of your weekend. And we'll look forward to seeing the members tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Bye for now.